Appreciate it. We are live, just so you know, pre-show. Waiting for Phil.
So I better not say anything.
Yeah, just let you know. Just
while I'm going out there, like
it will be public. Still waiting for Phil, and then we'll get started.
Yes. Okay. Well, that's okay. I can let that be made public. I was trying to read up on some of the stuff we were supposed to talk about today, but it's been a long week, a long hot week at that. Like, so
yeah, I feel you on that, Rosemary. I told my wife the other day, I said it was so hot yesterday that heat ran me inside like some loose pit bulls. That's how hot it was outside.
Oh yeah, I wasn't playing with it. I was like, I'm staying in. I had events and everything I was supposed to go to. I was like, it's too hot.
Yeah, it'll make you sit down somewhere. That's for sure.
Yep. And couldn't get my house cool enough, and I wasn't turning the bill up. Duke would have really enjoyed that.
Yep, they can't miss. This is perfect for Duke. You know, you get that they hitting you upside the head all winter with hundreds of dollars in phone bills, and then you get a hot summer where people gotta crank up that AC. They making money hand over fist.
Yes. Okay, I'm sharing this now. Let's watch it. Mic Cincy. So who else is coming on? You said Phil?
Yeah, I think it's just the four of us today. Small, intimate group. So I think the plan is for all of us to pile up on Phil, no matter what the conversation is. Even if you have to change your original point of view just to disagree with Phil, I think that's the game plan.
Let's see. All right. Hold on. Oh, okay.
Phil, we are live. What's going on? Good to see you. Happy Friday.
Good to see you, folks. Good to see you.
Hey, Phil, we were just talking about, you asked us to be nice to you today. So
yeah, that'll happen. Yeah, in my dreams, that'll happen.
So the consensus is for all of us to agree with you, no matter what you say.
Yeah.
Okay, it's to agree with me no matter what I say. That's a little confusing to me, I would say.
Oh yeah? Why so?
Well, you're saying you're going to agree with me, but it doesn't matter what I. By the way, Rosemary, I apologize for getting a little kind of heat in our last discussion. I should have been more restrained and polite. But I don't blame you. I blame those others. Okay, they egged me into it. Okay.
No, it's all good. Like I had to go back and review, and I was like, oh my God, for the first time, I actually raised my tones. And I was like, I've never raised tones anywhere, but it's good conversation and it's passion. And that's just what it is. But no, it's cool. Like, I appreciate it. Challenging me to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, I just don't want.
Rosemary, you shouldn't believe that.
I don't want you to be over.
You shouldn't believe that fake apology from Phil any more than he would believe what I said about us agreeing with him for the entire
That was
show.
a real apology. It was not fake.
But you say he's gonna do it again today, so
he absolutely within the first 5 minutes.
Sure, but doesn't take away from my apology. And by the way, I don't blame you, Rosemary, because the saying, you're judged by the company you keep, and these gentlemen here, I hold them responsible for any of your comments. So
It's all good. It's all good. These are tough conversations to have.
You tell me about it.
And everybody has strong viewpoints. I think the easiest conversation was about the minister, like beating up the guy, like, what did he say?
Oh,
Lay hands.
well,
So
there,
lay hands on the sick.
Yeah, but you know what? He's not the only one getting heat for making comments. Like Drewski is getting heat. Like, I didn't watch the BET Awards, but I watched like the clips, and he taking heat. I thought it was funny. Some people were called it blasphemy, but I'm like, you got to have a sense of humor too in these times. And so,
that's what I've been
What did he
telling these
say?
guys for
I
months
missed it.
and
What did he
months,
say?
Rosemary.
What did Drewski say? I missed it.
No, he had did like this skit where he like flew into the BET Awards like a pastor from the sky and was just like, yeah, like it had went viral, and he did that same skit right there, just basically looking at the greed of pastors with his Louis Vuittons.
I'm jumping off.
You say he was jumping off for what? Did y'all hear what Phil said? He said,
I
I'm
think
jumping off.
he probably got off because he was probably having some. It sounded like he was having some technical issues.
There goes these. I see Famous here. Do you want to tell that story about Mr. Darren Chamberlain?
Man, so my man Fame, we ran into each other last night at the Funny Bone up here in Liberty Township. We were both there to watch Aries Spears, who's one of my favorite comedians. And we chopped it up beforehand, about the shows, Lincoln, Hot Mic, all that kind of stuff, and introduced Fame to my wife and all that kind of stuff. And so then he went on about his way, and he said prior to, because we were sitting up front, he had actually kind of intimated that, you never know what happened, might become part of the show, right? So I kind of joked with him on that. I was like, man, what, you got a set? You about to do a set before things pop off? Well, about 2/3 of the way through the show, during the end, Aries Spears, who's famous for his crowd work during his comedy shows, started doing what he does, going around kind of like the front rows. And of course, Fame was sitting front and center there. And he asked Fame, he said, hey, brother, he said, what's your name? And Fame said his name was Edsel. And so he started going in on him about that, about his name. So he kept going back to a few times during the comedy show, doing riffs on Edsel. He called him Pretzel one time, called him Ezekiel a few times. So he just kept messing with him about the name. But the real funny part was that Fame was rolling there by himself. And so Aries Spears asked him, he was like, hey, brother, he's like, you who you here with? You got a significant other, somebody you with? And Fame was like, nah, man, I'm just here, kind of celebrating my birthday, by myself. And so the crowd was like, they started cheering for him, that like, yeah, man, that's good that you come out and do your thing, by yourself. You know what I'm saying? You don't need nobody to celebrate. And Aries Spears kind of like, nah, he gave that look like, nah, that ain't cool. He was like, this brother might be a serial killer. He might have 5 white women in the basement, back at his chained up down at his house. And man, it was funny, but it was all in good nature. Fame took it well, and it was a good time. It was a good show. So I think Aries Spears is there through Sunday. If you like that type of thing and you got the means, it's a cheap ticket. I recommend checking it out. But good to see my man Fame though.
Fame was up in Liberty Township, huh? Okay, cool. Can't hear you, Rosemary.
I said, what's your definition of cheap? Because your definition of affordable might not be everybody else's definition.
You know what? You're right about that, Rosemary.
I'm starting early.
Well, let me ask you this, Rosemary. Here's how you can know that. Have you ever been to his estate?
No.
Okay. Well, then that would answer your question.
Estate. Not home, estate.
Who's estate? What Phil talking about? His Indian Hills surroundings? I know that's what he's talking about. I live in a humble.
We'll say it this way, because I work for a nonprofit. So y'all's definition of cheap might not be my definition of cheap. Like mine is like, oh, tickets $25, $35. Yours might be $150. So
nah, it ain't that much. I mean, I think those tickets is maybe like $35 or something like that. So that's
we're gonna
reason.
say
I mean,
reasonable, not cheap. Reasonable.
Okay.
Reasonable.
All right.
Right.
You're
And
right.
by the way, Rosemary, if you want to know who's got the bucks, do you know that Kevin is the owner of a professional basketball
Team.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
I
he's in
know.
no position to be, talking about, oh, how hard life is for him and this and that. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I know.
Phil,
The
let me
only one in
correct you.
the only one in Greater Cincinnati, the basketball team.
This is
What is
true.
your
This is true.
nonprofit, Rosemary? Remind me.
Rosemary's Babies Company.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yes, where we support teen parents and families between the ages of 9 and 19. And
Now,
yeah,
did you take that after the old movie? Yes.
well, I won't say that because I don't want to get sued, but I was kind of tortured by that movie when I was growing up because of my name. And so you kind of take something negative and turn it into a positive. And then Brandon 101, people are going to remember whether you hate it or love it. So,
yeah.
You know what, Rosemary, we should talk because, since Phil brings up the Kings, one of the things that we try to do as best we can is sort of partner with organizations in the city to, like, particularly when the ones that deal with young people, to get them access to something to do. So this is not even about like trying to make, which we think we do have a cheap ticket, which is only $10. But even with that, we don't want that to be a barrier to any young people in the city who want to get out and just enjoy, some hoop. So organizations that are trying to do positive things, working with young people and whatnot, we always want to try to see if we can work with them, and maybe that just be like one more incentive that you can offer to help out the clients or whatever that you deal with. So that's something that we should talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to have your team sponsor an event, collect donations for the Holloway House. And in case people didn't know, that's our big building on Redden Road in Lenox, at least for now. That's our building on Redden Road in Lenox, the Holloway House and Resource Center. I think that is great. We're celebrating, we're walking into 10 years that I've been doing this work. Man, I'm glad I don't look like my struggles. That's why I put the weave gray in there.
I do the same thing with my hair too. Same thing.
Yeah. Phil, I was gonna say, man, you and me got to get together because I think you can really be like a mentor and a confidant, somebody who can help me deal with receding hairline issues. Because it's like every week that I go to my barber, I notice I get a little farther pushed back. And as someone who has gone through that, and has come out on the other side.
This is a Kevin Aldridge backhanded compliment, Rosemary. Just to introduce you. What's going
just go
on
bald head. Just go
the only kind
bald.
of compliment he knows how to give. Okay.
Just go bald. I think you could go there because it's already pretty low. Just go bald.
Yeah, I've thought about that, Rosemary. I'm working through it. That's why I want to consult Phil. Like, at what stage did you get to the point where you just like let it go? Keep
going lower and lower. Just keep going lower and lower. You already almost there, so you might as well just go
ahead and take the plunge.
Just go ahead because it's not gonna look too different. But your head gonna sweat. Like your head gonna sweat. Like your head's gonna sweat. But
have you considered a toupee, perhaps, Kevin? I think all of us. All of us.
No, there'll be no hair replacement.
I think we pay money.
No toupee.
Everybody on the show would pay money to see you in a toupee. Okay, I'll guarantee it.
Hey, I know. I have a friend who went that route. Who got the toupee, and it looked. Well, I ain't gonna say nothing because he might be tuned in and don't know who I'm talking about. What I want to say, I'll just simply say that's not the route that I'm going down. I'm gonna just do like what Rosemary said. I'll just take a razor to it and call it a day. But
there's no stigma these days, is it? I mean, like, I just thought that these days, like, it's as long as you rock it confidently. Not that you care about women, but if you're a man, women, talking to you, Kevin, I know you're married, but for a man, women don't care about that. I don't think anyway. Like, as long as you carry yourself a certain way and you a good dude, whatever that means, they're not really worried about your toupee or your two-piece.
Well, let me put it this way: they're much more interested in your bank account than in your.
Oh wow. Oh wow.
Oh yeah, obviously,
Okay.
obviously, we know that.
That's-
We still gotta wake
Ladies,
up
what
and
y'all
look at
think
you though.
about
Wait a
that?
minute, now.
Ladies.
We still gotta wake up and look at you, but you know, but they got these
Wake up and look.
yeah, we still gotta wake up and look at you, but they have black barbers now that do like the spray line. You know how the girls, well, my baby hair ain't down, I'm too old for baby hair, but they have like these barbers. You got to talk the next time D4 is on there, they like spray you a hairline.
Do they do white? Do they do that for white people too? These guys?
I think that for white people they take like your bottom hair and then put that on your head.
Oh,
your bottom hair.
Really? So
I don't
white
even know- I
men
don't
usually
even know
fight that hairline to the bitter end.
Like he gonna be trying to figure that out. Like, did she just say take my ass hair and put it on my head? Yeah.
Rosemary, I know that was
weird.
not what you were saying because you are a very polite woman and would never say anything or suggest anything like that.
That was so un-Christian like of me, wasn't it? But I like to laugh. So
Now, I like what Tony Huey just said. He's given up the fight. So
Give up the fight,
Tony.
Yeah.
We respect that. We respect that.
Yeah. All right, guys. Let me put everybody backstage, and we'll get the show started officially. And to all the people in the audience, we really back. Yes, we are. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Nathan Ivy with you. Welcome back to Hot Mic Cincy. We got Rosemary with us again. Happy about it. How you doing, Rosemary?
I'm good. I'm good. Hot, but I'm good.
Yes, it's very hot. We got the voice of reason, Kevin Aldridge. How you doing, sir?
Doing good, man. Good to have. Good to be back. Happy 4th of July to everybody.
Oh yeah, that is tomorrow, isn't it?
And Phil Heimlich, how you doing, sir? Why does this happen to Phil every time?
I don't know. I think he does it on purpose.
Nah, I think I can still hear the show. He might have it up on Facebook or YouTube or something. What? It's every show with this guy. What is going on with this man? Hey, Phil.
Look, I was on another window and I'm listening for the music to end. The music kept going.
Oh, yeah, but I always start the show before the music ends. That's what's happening.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I know that I know what it's like for you guys. If I was to miss even a minute or two, the show would be in chaos. So I apologize. I understand.
It would. As Edsel says all the time, you're the heart and soul of the show. So yeah, you're absolutely
shucks. Right. Oh, shucks. Do you really mean it?
No. Yeah, I really mean it. I can't burst your bubble now as you say it like that.
So much to me. Thank you so much. Much.
Yes, it is. Very, very well deserved. To the audience, thanks for being here. We appreciate you. Some of you have been with us for the last 10, 15 minutes, and we're just kind of getting things started officially. Really appreciate you. And welcome to the conversation. If you want to join in, there are links, and I'll post it again inside the show. You can join via your phone, video, If you want to take the video off and just talk on the audio, you can do that well. Make it more like a traditional call-in show. But those are your avenues. If you're on YouTube, thank you. Glad to have you with us, rolling with us here the day before July 4th. And this is a very significant, this is different. This is the 250th anniversary of our country's, humble beginnings. And so we got to start with some conversation about that. And we'll jump around here. I'm just going to use this as sort of a basic way to get into conversation. But there's a lot of conversation about how people feel about the country right now. And there are some really polarized opinions. So just to get to the conversation very simply, are you proud to be an American? What makes you proud of America today? And what concerns you most?
I mean, I guess I'll go first. Jump off the ledge first. I mean, I would say I'm proud to be an American. I mean, and I say that in the framework of, I am an American. I live in this country. I still believe, despite all its flaws, there's no place else that I would rather position myself because of the freedoms that we enjoy and everything that goes along with being an American. But I think we got to get past this point where in this country that if you're critical of America, or if you start to talk about America's blemishes that still exist today, or even in terms of what our current government is doing, if you're not satisfied with that, like we all do it. I don't care whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. If you're a Republican, you had issues with America when Joe Biden was in office, right? And you talk trash about America and what it could be and what it wasn't under Biden's leadership. And you're getting a lot of that, right now from a lot of the country who doesn't like how Trump is doing things. So being critical of how the country is run is as American as anything else. So you cannot use that as a framework to say somebody is unpatriotic or they're not patriotic, right? That the criticism is a part of it. We talk all the time about how we strive to be a more perfect union, right? But I said this yesterday when I hosted Lincoln. I think if you're Black in America, you gotta, there's a complex relationship that you have with this country, because so many of the principles and things that this country was built on and what it espouses were not intended to apply to us, right? And in many cases, we weren't even regarded as human. We were regarded as property when we were in slavery here at the beginnings of this nation. So you cannot take that long history followed by Jim Crow in this country, where you've had the government actively working against you, right? And expect Black people in this country to have the same regard and the same feelings towards America as white Americans do. It's just a different story. It's just a different history. And so it doesn't mean Black folks don't love America, but what it does mean is that there are a lot of things that America has done to Black folks that you don't love. And that continue to happen, through systemic applications. And so am I proud to be an American? Sure. Absolutely. Would I want to live anyplace else? No. Has America got a lot of work to do and a lot of making up still to do? Absolutely, 100%.
Like I agree with a lot of what you said. Like, that's one of the dope things about living in America. The Constitution gives us our right to take our grievances to our government. And in other countries, they can't do that without being, what did he call it, caned, or as women, not even being able to have that freedom of speech whatsoever. And so, so again, that's our God-given right based on the Constitution. And so am I proud to be an American? Absolutely. I'm proud to be an American because, a little girl from the hood who went through every bit of trauma and was probably a 20 on the ACE assessment of things that I went through in my life, I have still been able to achieve the American dream, of 2.5 kids. I don't have a dog anymore, but the home ownership, business ownership, and the freedom to live in the way that I choose to live. And that's something, again, that we don't see in other countries. as a woman, I'm able to be vocal and marry who I want, and or married to have married who I want, and to be able to help people in the capacity that I do through my nonprofit and through, having a voice at the table. Whereas in most countries, you can't do that. A couple of years ago, I got the opportunity to tour Europe, and like I got off in, I think it was London or whatever, and they had cameras everywhere. You had to go through all these checks, and if you're on a certain street, they're able to like locate your face and all of those things. Like we really don't have all those things here in America. And so again, you have freedoms that you don't normally have. And I wouldn't change anything. What concerns me most in today's society is the lack of respect for our freedoms, the lack of respect that people have for differences in people's voices, and that the direction that our children are going, because they don't have a clear direction, which should actually come from leadership and come from parents. And so that really concerns me, considering I work for the youth and I work in service.
Phil, what you thought? What are your thoughts?
There's an expression, which I'm sure you've all heard, that patriotism is the last refuge of scoundrels. And I don't think that means it's bad to be patriotic, but I have to be honest with you, I have always been sickened by the way some of the worst leaders and the worst demagogues want to wave the flag around to justify their behavior. And they do the same thing with the Bible too. And it's very, to me, it's very offensive. On the other hand, I read something about a week ago that actually about Frederick Douglass, that he actually had tremendous respect for the Constitution, believed in the Constitution, which tells me that it's one thing that we respect what the founders did, or even better, what is in our Constitution and in our Declaration of Independence, regardless of whether we've always lived up to it. So I think that's worth celebrating. I have to be honest with you. I've heard this before about, that Bill Maher had a big bit last weekend. It was, hey, our country, you may complain about it, but look, these other countries don't have this, they don't have this, they don't have this. And okay, that may be so, but I believe what's happening in this country now in terms of the efforts to undermine our democracy and free speech, it doesn't feel the same as anything I've experienced before. And I've heard it said that our republic is in greater danger now than any time since the Civil War. And I'm not sure I don't agree with that. And let's be honest, if at some point things in this country go really south, really, really bad as far as these issues I'm talking about, I don't know how proud I would be of this country. And I also could envision if things go in the direction they're going, and to an extreme way, they may not. I wouldn't hesitate to move to another country.
Can I? And this may be more of a philosophical point, right? Because I get what Phil is saying, right? Like, and I brought this up yesterday. Like a big part of the feeling that you have about America right now is mainly because of the people who are in charge and those who are enabling those.
But what they're doing specifically,
right? And so the philosophical question is this: is your pride in being an American dependent upon the actions of others, or does your pride as an American exist outside of that? Because I would pose it in the same way. And let's just put this in terms of black and white, right? Or in the sense of humanity. Like, are you proud to not be human? Or are you proud not to be black? Or are you proud not to be white because of the actions of a minority or a specific section of your like group? So I say this all the time. I feel like some in the white community try to make black people feel guilty as a whole about the actions of a very small percentage of us. And I refuse to take on that burden, because black people not every black person represents me. Just all kin folk ain't, or skin folk ain't kin folk, right? Everybody your color ain't your kind. And so basically, I refuse to take on, to me, my sense of pride as being a black man based on actions of people who don't represent me or what I believe or my values, regardless. And so,
okay, but let me stop right there.
okay,
Yeah, in the negative, but when black people go do something that you're not affiliated with, that's something that people would respect. You would take pride in it, right? Even though you didn't.
If it
even though
matched,
you didn't.
if it matched my values, if it matched my values, right? Like most positive
Right, but it's
things,
something that you didn't do.
huh?
I said, but it's something that you didn't do. I'm just challenging the idea that just because you didn't do it as a black person means you shouldn't feel some way about it.
But
Because
in the negative,
you're saying you're not going to absorb somebody else's negativity, but you'll absorb somebody else's positivity, though.
Yeah, but again, at the end of the day, none of that has any sense of pride about how I feel about myself as a black person. So my actions, my values, I'm not saying that I don't derive. I'm not saying that I don't derive a sense of enjoyment and accomplishment, but Tiger Woods winning the Masters ain't got nothing. I ain't winning the Masters. It's because of what it represents. Certainly there's some pride in that, but Tiger Woods winning the Masters has nothing to do with how I feel about myself as a black person. Win or lose, my pride is not dependent upon what somebody else does.
Yeah.
But I feel like,
can it boost it? Absolutely. Can I feel good about it? For sure. But my sense of pride comes from my beliefs, my values, my actions, right? It's not dependent on what somebody else does.
I feel like you like the point is being missed of how you define what it means to be an American, because now we rarely, like, there was a survey when I was running. My original campaign was to rebuild faith in the American dream. And we did like this research study on, did people still have faith in the American dream? And like I said, the American dream from when I was a kid in the hood, and somebody asked me what ACEs was, and that's adverse childhood experiences. So when I was a kid in the hood, back in the 80s and the 70s, when I grew up, it was 2.5 kids, white picket fence. If you went to college, I mean, you were a rock star. You know what I mean? If you were a doctor, you were rich. What does that American dream look like now? So it really is, what does it mean to be an American? Because for me, while yes, there has been traumatic issues that I've had to overcome with race, stigma, and everything, whether it be the election or whether it be starting a business. But I would still say that I'm proud to be an American, like you're saying, because I reached my dreams, because I was able to put my children through college, because I set this standard of what America promised me. And America promises you what? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of what your dreams are. And if you reach those, then therefore that's why I'm proud, because I've experienced life and I've pursued my dreams based on what America promised me. The only thing is that I ask America back, quit moving the line once we get there.
Are we as it's so ironic because there's so much chatter and so much conversation. Like, here we are celebrating America's 250th, while at the same time there's many people believe that we're watching the end of American democracy. Do you agree with that? Are we watching the end of American democracy under the Trump administration?
I've never believed that. I think, look, I get it, because we're living in the times. But if you go back and you look through historically the history of this country, there have been dark moments in American history that we've always overcome. And that has to be if you believe in the values and the principles of this country. Trump is a different kind of ne'er-do-well, for lack of a better term, than we've had in the presidency before, but he's not the first. I mean, you had Richard Nixon, you've had some others throughout history who have been bad actors and terrible leaders and who have not led this country, in the right direction. and yet America still persists and is still here, and democracy still survives. So I know it's vogue now. It's the popular thing to be like, oh, this is the death of democracy. And indeed, there are a lot of things that are going on, but people are still talking about the midterms. And if the Democrats get in, then things will be different. So what are you selling a bill of goods on the midterm? So then if you
but they're trying to pass an act that will disenfranchise.
Phil, let me finish my point. You either believe that the midterms can make a difference or they won't. So you can't have it both ways. You can't be like, oh, democracy is crumbling, even if the Democrats win the midterms. Either the midterms are going to be effective or they're not going to be effective in sort of changing this trajectory that you feel like the country is going in. That if
they're going to be rigged, by requiring everybody to have to show up with a passport or a.
But that's not passed, Phil. That's not passed, and the likelihood of that getting passed. I mean,
I know. I'm saying it depends. I think on how successful the people pushing that are at that.
Yeah, they're not gonna be successful, Phil. I think that's the thing. I think there is the alarmist rhetoric that is political to some degree to try to get people into action and come out and vote. And then there is the reality of the execution of such things. And I've said this many, many times, is that yes, our institutions are not always stepping up and holding the line in every area where we would like, but in a lot of areas they still are, even if by a thread. And you can look at the birthright, the citizenship birthright issue that we just talked about, right? The institution held up. It was a narrow victory, but it was still a victory that said, hey, this is a part of American culture and is going to hold up. So I am less alarmist and buying into the rhetoric than a lot of people. And look, I get it, why people do that. And that's the in vogue thing to do now. We live in the hyperbolic, most extreme eras that we possibly can. Trump set it off. Mr. Hyperbole, the greatest ever, the worst ever, the best ever. Things are phrased in those terms these days. And it's in vogue and it's popular to be an alarmist if you're on the liberal end and an apologist if you're on the conservative end. These are the extremes we live in our political time.
Well, we're a constitutional republic and we activate in democracy. That's when you vote. But we're voting for people. We're voting for a specific person to come forward and make determinations for all of us. So I think that's where we miss, where there's a party, but then overall, we are a constitutional republic. I don't ever think that there'll be a true breakdown in the system because there's 3 branches of government. And that's why they have those 3 branches of government now.
Where
has this administration? What do you mean? Where is this administration challenging those 3 branches and their powers? Absolutely.
With number one, where they're under the current administration, there aren't necessarily 3 branches of government with clear lines in between them like there used to be. There's one. There's one.
Supreme Court demanding that they change his decisions. He doesn't have that power.
There's one. That's the executive. Congress has completely stepped back. They're even. I mean, how many times they've been on recess in the last 6 months? They're always on recess because they don't want to bring up votes that might challenge the executive. And then you got a Supreme Court that every once in a while goes against Trump, but 99% of the time, 90% of the time, they're right there with him. So this idea that there's a separation of powers, that's the way it used to be, but is that what we're dealing with right now?
Yeah,
y'all see a separation of powers?
Yeah, I think that is just basically where you're sitting at, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, the executive branch. And while some of them may not be activating as strongly and actually doing their jobs, and we can all agree that there are times that Congress is not doing their jobs, but the Supreme Court, I think they're working in overdrive. And whether
I've never seen this before.
And whether those determinations, the Supreme Court is putting, like the other day, they put out 6, 7 decisions. Everything doesn't go in front of the Supreme Court because when those decisions come down, they change federal laws. And even with the
Can I say something in response to that?
Doesn't go in front of that. But from the executive branch, are they still working? Is the Senate still working? Is Congress still working? There's still legislation being presented and being passed. I just think that it's being overshadowed by media.
Yeah,
but
but what they're not doing,
they're
Rosemary,
doing their jobs.
But the one thing that they're not doing is oversight on the executive. You don't see Congress over the last year and a half doing any oversight over Donald Trump at all. Zero. They better not.
So
they better not, because if they do, they're going to get Thomas Massey.
So I guess my question is, why hasn't, and now mind you, I just ran for Congress in District 1. Why hasn't the Democratic congressman sitting in that seat actually filed for the president if he's done something illegal or unjust?
Why wouldn't they?
Why hasn't Greg Landsman called for articles of impeachment when he's sitting in Congress? But
it's not going to work. Republicans have the majority. We saw what happened last time.
It doesn't matter. He still, if every turn, the guy, what's his name, Al Green, filed for so many. He put up so many bills,
and it didn't work. They got shot down.
But it doesn't matter. You're saying they're not doing the job. The job is to present the legislation. Whether it gets through or not, you have to be a determining and fighting force, because that's what the voters put you in to do, to be a voice. And so if the president is doing something and activating illegally, the Constitution should stand, and they need to be able to utilize what he's violating within the Constitution to put that forth. And then as people, we demand that our congressional figures look at that, the violations that he's making against Congress and against his position, and force our Congress people to vote on those impeachment articles. But at this point, he's done a lot of things that are questionable, but not necessarily impeachable.
Yeah, here's the problem with that. Here's the problem with that, Rosemary. Here's the problem with that. You talked about, and I don't disagree with much of what you said about the processes and the people coming forward. But here's one of the things that Donald Trump says that is absolutely 100% right. People don't care, right? We become so tribal in our politics. Donald Trump now knows that he can come out and boldly say stuff where he gets asked a question like, hey, you making all of this money and these conflicts of interest. And Donald Trump is like, I don't think people really care about the conflicts of interest that I have. And you know what? He's right, because the politics is so tribal. Yes, it is, Nathan. The politics is so, Nathan, okay, whatever. Because the fact that he's not facing any repercussions from Congress, as Rosemary just said. If enough people on the Republican side stood up and said, hey, we demand that you check on this thing with Donald Trump and what he's doing, they would have to bend to the will of the people. But too many people on the Republican side are in Donald Trump's back pocket. The voters, 80 to 90% of Republican-based voters are in Donald Trump's pocket. And Donald Trump is right. Those people don't care about what he's doing, as long as he's as long as he's trolling the libs and serving the libs and saying
kicking out immigrants.
But he can't be impeached. He can't be impeached for trolling. I mean,
we're not talking about the troll. We're not talking about impeaching him for the trolling
or putting up rude post in the middle of the night.
No, that's not what we're talking about, Rosemary. We're talking about the actual impeachable things that he's doing. The MAGA people have said it. Just look at people like Ann Coulter. Yeah, I know Donald Trump is the most corrupt president we've ever had, but you know what? I don't care, because he's taking care of the border. Right? That is the attitude on the MAGA side of things. The voters and the people who back Donald Trump pretty much have said he can do whatever, including probably shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue. And because he's serving the libs, because he's kicking out immigrants, because he's saying all of these things that were previously politically incorrect to say, but he says them and now is giving me permission to say them, all of that is acceptable to overlook these other things about him that I know are corrupt and that I don't like. Well, and that's why every time, and that's why I kind of got on you. This is why every time candidates who are running for office will never say anything against Donald Trump, because you know what I just said is true.
Oh yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is, Well, the Supreme Court gave him immunity, but they did not give him immunity from criminal offenses as well. So he has immunity
Whoa,
from
whoa,
certain
whoa, whoa!
actions.
Yes,
But
they
he has
did.
immunity from certain actions when he's in office and decisions, but he does not have immunity from
He
certain
has
criminal
immunity
things.
from criminal offenses
No, he does
while
not.
they committed
No,
while he
he
was
does
in
not.
office.
No, he does not, because I read the Supreme Court
Yeah, well,
decision.
you
He
with
does
all
not
due
have
respect, with
immunity
all due
from
respect, you're
criminal
wrong.
offenses.
You're
As a
totally
president,
wrong.
he cannot. As a
He does.
president, he can't go shoot somebody and he get off because he was
Yes, he
president.
can.
No,
Hold
he
on,
cannot.
hold on. Can I say
No, he
something?
cannot.
Rosemary, you are 100% wrong about that. In fact, when Trump's lawyers argued about this in front of the Supreme Court, they actually made that point. They actually told the justices. One of the justices, I think it was Sotomayor, asked the question. So what you're saying is the president could get SEAL Team 6 to go take off one of his rivals and claim that it's a part of national security and he would be immune. And they said yes. And that's just the reality of it. So he can.
So it does have to be so here's the nuance of it. It has to be official acts. It cannot be private or personal self-interest acts. So Trump, if he were to do something like that, so again,
Meaningless distinction.
if he were to
Meaningless
send in,
distinction.
yeah, if he were to send in
Meaningless.
SEAL Team 6 to go after, let's just say, somebody in Iran.
That's an official action.
That's
Right.
an official action.
Right.
If
That
he
would
was
be an
to send
official action.
Team 6 after you, Kevin, because he said you were Antifa, that's what it is. Ain't nothing nobody
Yeah,
can do
well,
about it.
I still say there's a burden of proof in every case that you have to make the case. It's not just enough for Donald Trump to say that you, I, or Rosemary is a terrorist and send
should go
SEAL
back.
Team 6 after you.
No, that's not what the
There has to
Supreme
be
Court
some
said.
evidence.
But
Now
that's also
he might plant that evidence. I'm not putting it past him to
but
plant
that's
that
also
evidence.
where the
evidence.
three branches
If
of
it's
government
an
kick
act as
in.
president,
And
he's
he still will
immune.
he has to have a day in court, because it's not to say that people can't challenge what he did. The same as when
They
he called
can't
the war.
challenge it.
But
can't.
the Congress can do an inquiry.
That's different. That's different from immunity from criminal prosecution.
But if they find that, and he does not have immunity, like you said, he can't go out here and just kill somebody. Trump himself,
as long as he does it as part of a
between what he
presidential
can do in
duty,
office
he
and what he
is
can do
immune.
personally.
I mean, we're arguing about something that's nobody's disputing is in dispute. Okay, that, as Nathan said, that I mean, one of the lawyers actually asked
that question.
So the judge said you're saying if he orders SEAL Team 6 to kill a political opponent, he's immune. And essentially, whether they said exactly, basically the gist is, yeah, he's immune. He is immune from any. And you're going to say, okay, I guess if he walks out on the street and tries to rob somebody or shoot somebody having nothing to do with being president, yeah, that would not be an official act. But I can promise you, every bit of corruption that he's engaged in, all the stuff with the no bid contract, all that kind of stuff, that he did as president. And for that, he cannot be prosecuted.
And Donald Trump is the most powerful president that you've ever heard of.
And the Supreme Court
Can I say
gave
one
him
thing,
that
Rosemary,
power.
if you don't mind? Nathan talked about the separation of powers. Here's when, and I know I'm the pessimist among, at least more so than Kevin is, but I know I'm kind of pessimistic. And I always say this, humanly speaking, God could do anything. But the separation of powers, forget Congress for a sec, even if they're impotent, but let's even assume that's a check, because at least potentially it is a check. Here's the thing about the Supreme Court to remember. They don't have an army. They have no ability to enforce their rulings. The reason they have, don't shake your head, I'm telling you the truth, the reason they have been able to be,
I agree.
I'm not done. The reason they have been able to be a separate and equal branch is because up until this time, and I would even say including this time, everyone, even somebody like Richard Nixon, who was pretty corrupt, even people have always just obeyed. They haven't said, no, I'm not going to do it. Well, what I'm saying is, and I'm not saying it's happening now, but if you want to know what the sign is that our democracy is done, It's when they order Trump to do something and he says, I don't have to do it. I'm not doing it. That's when our democracy is
It's
done.
already happened.
Well,
With
it happened to a
Abrego
degree.
Garcia.
To a degree. He kind of they really didn't obey various federal court orders about immigrants. That is true. So he's inching in that direction. But he's, at least for, let's say, Supreme Court decisions, he's not saying, screw you. I'm not going to let anybody who came here, who was born here, his parents are illegal, I'm not going to let them be citizens. But it's my prediction. I have a sense down the road there will come a time when he will treat the Supreme Court like he treated Mike Pence and Michael Cohen and all the other enablers. He's going to say, screw you. I've gotten all I can out of you, and now I'm doing what I want. I'm not going to listen to you. Go ahead and try and make me.
You know, Kevin has forgotten that when Trump was in office the last time, it was a coup. And the only reason why he didn't stay in office was because of Mike Pence. One person. That was the only difference. One person between bedlam in the streets, people at each other's throats. It was one person. So human beings are way more fragile than we think we are. And then when you put money involved and the prospect of living a good life, man, please, people will do anything to live a good life, live in a good house. You know what I'm saying? As a man, to come to your wife and tell her you providing, putting your kids in private schools, driving Benz, man, people will do anything for that, including turn their back on little things like the Constitution. And we're watching it right now in front of us.
Some people
humans are fragile.
Some people will, Nathan. But the one thing that you said that always gives me hope, and you say one person as if that is a negative thing, but how often through the course of human history and the history of this country has one person been the difference between calamity and our better days?
But he's got his lackeys in all those positions.
He's got his lackeys in all those positions.
You don't, Phil. You don't know that, because here you're making.
We do know that
a lot of us are making a lot of presumptions right now about what will happen when the chips are down. That's the difference between me and you guys. You guys are absolute. You guys are absolute in your presumptions about things that have not happened, may not happen, whatever. But what I'm saying is when John McCain had an opportunity to kill the Affordable Care Act, what did he do? He walked thumbs down. One person. I mean, again, we can go back through history, and that's all it takes. When we look at birthright citizenship, one judge made the difference in that room. One person. So literally, all it takes is one person with values, with common sense, and a little bit of care about the history of this country. And you don't know who that person may wind up being who can make a difference. Hopefully it's more than that.
Well, there's a reason why juries are not comprised of just one person, Kevin.
But it only takes one. It only takes one to keep
there's a reason why juries are, what are they, 12 people? They're not just one person. Yeah. Because one person is easily compromised, and you don't want to leave your fate in the hands of just one person.
I'm not saying our fate is in the hand of one person, but I'm just saying, and to use your criminal analogy, it only takes one person not to go along. It only takes one person not to go along with the rest to get a hung jury.
You're trying to spin something into a positive. You're trying to spin something that's really a negative into a positive.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying one person can have tremendous impacts.
That's not the point, though. The point is, that's not the point. You're trying to spin what is
may not be your point, but that's my point.
Right, that's your point. That's your point.
You can make your point. I've made mine.
Yeah, you made your point, but you completely missed the point. The point is that if our democracy of 350 million people is hanging by the thread of one person, we got a major problem. And now that one person, Mike Pence, that one person, Mike Pence, has been replaced by J.D. Vance, and he's already told you what he would have done. So,
Nathan, here's why it doesn't miss the point and why it makes the point, because I've just said historically, you can go back through history in this country and around the world where the one person has made a tremendous difference. We're always on a knife's edge, brother, between the abyss and prosperity. It has never not been that way. And that is the fallacy of your thinking, is that we've always been on the knives and the razor edge, and it's always been the act or a small group of individuals that
How long you been voting, Kevin?
That have forced everybody else to move over.
How long have you been voting?
Since I was old enough to vote, 18.
Since you was 18, so that's what, 30-some years, right? At least, right? So in the 30 years you've been voting, have you ever seen a president who was duly elected or not elected stage a coup attempt? And not just stage a coup attempt, right? Because most people focus on January 6th, but they had fake electors. They had a nationwide scheme. Have you ever seen that happen before? You have? When?
No, I haven't.
Okay, then.
No,
so let's stop acting like. So hold on, let me finish now. I'll land and get out the way. So let's stop acting like this is usual. See, that's the problem. We keep trying to normalize this. Oh, we always on the razor's edge. We have never been in this position ever in your lifetime. Stop acting like this is normal. This is not normal.
I'm not suggesting it's normal. What I'm telling you is normal is the American and human spirit and the resilience
human frailty
to beat back this stuff. Trump tried it. Was he successful? No.
Because of one.
And I don't believe he'll be successful if he
tries.
That's the difference. That's the difference between you, me, and Phil. Y'all live in the alarmist era of
it's not alarmist. It's called pragmatic.
You're already conceding that this man can do whatever he wants and that he's already won. And I'm saying
because he just tried it. The best predictor. What's the best predictor of the future? The past. So in the most recent past.
So if you do that, Nathan, he failed.
Can I finish my point? Let me finish my point. So
just said the best predictor of future events is past production. He failed.
So we have a man who tried to subvert the will of the electorate. And the only thing that stood between that was the vice president. And the current vice president would go along with whatever. And you're telling us that's alarmist? No, that's being pragmatic.
Can I throw something in here, Nathan? Can I throw something in? The guy that historically I think most resembles Trump is Joe McCarthy. Okay. And by the way, if you haven't seen, there's a great documentary called Point of Order, or you can watch the old Edward R. Murrow show that he did on McCarthy. There's good stuff. And I frankly think anybody who cares about this country should be familiar with that. He was an exact replica of Trump. Okay. He just made stuff up. I've got the names of 200 communists in the State Department. He just he just made it up. And he was a demagogue and he played on the fear of communism. Now, was he able to he did damage. He hurt a lot of people. But here's the thing. He was just a senator. He did not have control over the military, over the FBI, over the Justice Department, and on and on. Okay. We now, in effect, and I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong about this. I really do. But we have a Joe McCarthy, an equivalent of Joe McCarthy, who has complete control of the Justice Department. They fired all the FBI Justice Department guys that were really people of integrity. They got rid of them. He has the Justice Department. He has the FBI, and he's got the military. Okay. So I think this is a different time. And to tell you the truth, I agree, Kevin. One person might stand up, but I think the way this is going is there isn't going to be one person that's going to have the ability to stop it. The only one that will have the ability to stop it is Donald Trump. That's
so what you're telling me is that you believe that if Donald Trump ordered the military, let's just say to take out his political opponents and Democrats and liberals in this country, you think that the military establishment, all of the soldiers, some of whom have Democratic and liberal people in their family, that they're going to follow that order and that they're going to go out. This is what you believe about the Americans who are a part of the military, that they're so in the bag that they would follow these types of illegal orders from Donald Trump, that you believe that the military, the FBI agents, and all of these people are going to go out and execute these nefarious orders by Donald Trump without question.
Yeah, well, let's look what's happened. They've already.
No. Answer that question.
He's answering. Let him answer.
Yes, no,
I am answering it.
Yes, no. I don't
let
want
him answer the way he wants to.
Yes or no. I want a yes or no answer. I want
Let him answer the way he wants
it's a
to,
simple
Kevin.
yes or no.
Let me answer
You
the
either
question.
believe that will happen or you don't. Don't
Let
give
me
me
answer
the
the
whole yes or no.
Let him
I
answer the way he
believe it.
wants to.
No, I don't know. I'm doing what Phil does. This is
You
what
can't-
Phil does.
you can't force-
y'all like when Phil be prosecuting when it come to Trump and he want these yes or
I'm
no
glad
answers.
I've been a
I don't
role
want all
model
that
for you,
BS,
by the way.
Phil.
That I'm
Yes
happy
or
with.
no. Yes or no. Answer the question.
Kevin,
like
you
this
made
Judge,
my day.
the
You
witness
made my
is being
day.
uncooperative, Judge. The
I'm
witness
gonna
is
start
being
calling you Phil
uncooperative.
Our
Jr.
witness. Phil, go ahead.
Let's throw something at right along those lines because Kevin
I
actually makes
forgot
a
the
point.
question. What's the next subject?
I just
I
asked
don't
you
even
a
know.
question.
I don't even know.
I gotta say something here. Remember something. With Trump, if Trump pushes one button and doesn't get it, he pushes another. So let's talk about ICE. ICE is I believe the second or third largest now army in the world. Okay, I mean this force is it will be when the funding goes through so powerful. Okay, they're going to be, I believe it's the second or third largest army in the world. So and they know, the people who know that, they know who they're loyal to. Okay, that's real clear. All right, now maybe Kevin, Trump tells the military to go in and who knows, lock up liberals or do whatever the heck it is. Maybe even though Hegseth is in charge of the military, he is in charge, and he's put his own people. He's putting his own people. You know, he's firing all the great guys. You know that, putting his own people in. But even if those people, as you would say, one of them stands up, one general says, "I'm not doing this." Well, guess what? He'll just tell ICE to do it. Okay, so.
So, again, I want you to follow your alarmist points of view to their logical end. And this is where we differ, because what you're talking about is all out civil war, because you make the assumption the assumption that not just the military and other people who don't agree with this in these different areas wouldn't rise up. And I'm not talking about one guy. I'm talking about in the midst of the military,
what do you mean by rise
not going to go along with this. And then you're telling me that there are American citizens who are armed to the teeth, right? We ain't just talking about conservatives. We're talking about Americans who are armed to the teeth.
Americans are not armed to the teeth.
And they're mostly loyal to
people
Trump.
are just going to sit back? You think people are just going to sit back and get rounded up?
Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen.
And not put up any kind of resistance?
Absolutely.
Like when you logically think about what you guys are talking about,
you guys
are talking about.
Look at Minneapolis. Look what happened in Minneapolis. Let's talk about that.
We ain't talking about Minneapolis. You're talking about a nationwide scale type thing.
But what
it always starts
Minneapolis can be expanded. Just think about something. They went in there, okay, and even assuming there was some violence committed by the protesters and there was some basis for arresting people, I can accept that. But let's look what happened. They murdered, as best we can tell, they murdered two innocent people, okay? I have a question. Has there even been an investigation? I haven't seen it. It's been months. Where's the investigation? There is none. So to respond to what you're saying, he in effect told those guys, in fact, Stephen Miller and Trump said to the ICE guys, he said, hey, he said this, don't worry, we've got your back, you've got immunity. They've been told that. So they went in and killed those two people. And there isn't even a cover-up because there's nothing to cover up. There's no investigation. Now, granted, that's a small slice, but let's say that happens on a much larger scale. Let's say the next time it's 50 people or 100 people, okay? I think.
So you think a Tiananmen Square, you think in the United States of America, a Tiananmen Square type incident.
It's already happened.
Would go unchecked.
You ever heard of Kent State?
When you say unchecked, what do you mean? How do you?
No, I'm just saying you're saying like what you guys are proposing, the extent to which you're talking about a coup and a domination and a takeover and killing political enemies, the types of stuff that you guys are talking about, you literally think that, and it ain't the same. What ICE did in Minneapolis is nothing like what you guys are proposing.
How is it different
on the scale at which you're talking about?
Other than scale, how is it different?
You would think that the American people would just sit back and not
other
rise
than
up.
scale.
As many people as I see in the chat talking trash, just in the chat, talking about what they ain't gonna stand for.
But that's why they said you have a right to bear arms.
What you think these people
I know you don't want to
answer. There would be an insurgent in Washington.
Let me ask a question that Kevin doesn't want to answer. Other than scale, what's the difference between what you're talking about and what Phil just described happened in Minnesota? Other than scale, what's the difference?
I can tell you what the difference is because when you're talking about one or two people and with the way the media works and everything like that, you can cast enough doubt on those situations where
sounds like a scale
you can
argument.
say, where you can defend the ICE officers and say, oh, look at what the lady did. She tried to run him over. You can do that
I said other than scale.
Isolated. You can do that in small, isolated.
You're making
incidents.
a scale argument.
It's harder to make that case on a larger scale.
You're making a scale argument. So my preface it again.
Absolutely. You guys are making the scale argument. You're talking about a guy unleashing the military on American citizens and
don't try to get away from this.
An election. It don't
try to get away from Phil's point. Don't try to get away from Phil's point. You're trying to deflect. Hold on, Rosemary. You're trying to deflect. So other than scale, you're not answering the question. Other than scale. What is the difference between what you're saying is impossible and what
scale
so there is no
big difference, Nathan.
So Phil is right.
You're trying to act like your question is idiotic. That's an idiotic question.
That's not going to work. That's not going to work, Kevin. You got to use logic. Don't just throw out words like idiotic. Explain it logically.
You're not using logic.
He just explained to you.
Is nonsensical.
So now you don't like the question.
You're talking about.
So now you don't like the question. Phil is right.
You're talking about action. Wait a minute. Let me just say this. And you tell me if this don't make sense. You and Phil knows it. That's why he got that smirk on his face because he knows this is a solid point. You are talking about an issue of scale. You're talking about
other than scale.
You're talking about
you're arguing something that nobody is arguing against.
That ain't scale.
You're not even having a good faith conversation. You cannot answer the question.
Can I respond to scale?
Hold on. He's not even answering the question in good faith other than scale.
I still want to throw something down, Kevin. You can respond. We assume, let's say that they go ahead and arrest 5 journalists who wrote negative pieces about Trump. 5
like
journalists.
Don Lemon?
No. Just pretend to assume that. Now, that's probably a mini percent of all the journalists. But you know what? All those other journalists are going to get the message. Just like in Russia, okay? Putin doesn't have to lock up that many people. He has to lock up enough to send the message, and so nobody else wants to try it. That's how it scales.
Obviously, Phil.
But again, Phil, how much impact in a free press society in America, right?
Free press.
They've already attempted. Okay, you bring up the Don Lemon example. Has that stopped journalists from continuing to report negatively and call out Donald Trump?
No, it hasn't. And they even tried to implement the Nick Shirley Act.
You talk about having a bad
so that people couldn't report how they wanted to report. The Democratic Party tried to attempt to implement the Nick Shirley Act so that they couldn't report what they want to report. But my thing is, even with all of this, I was reading some of the things we were supposed to be discussing today. Like a lot of this too is people think if they expand the Supreme Court that it'll change how these views go, because when people don't like a certain point of view or a certain decision, well, let's just change it, but not knowing that that's why the Constitution is written how it's written. That's why laws are written. So you can always fight them. I don't think any law is permanent anymore. I think that this is a president that is definitely challenging his power and seeing how far it can stretch. And we are all watching it. And we have never seen a president like it. And I think that there are things that for anybody that's running behind him, they're saying, oh, I would never do that. And then there's people running in front of him saying, I didn't know that I could do that. So while people are upset that this man sat there while he was arrested, while his family was arrested and all of these things, while they attacked him in ways that none of us could understand, that man sat there and he got some of the best people around him and said, when I win, what are the limitations of what I can do? And he is testing those limitations, and we are all seeing it. And there are people applauding that he is not a punk president, and he's testing those limitations. And so I do think that if he goes so broad, same thing with these no king rallies and things like that, people will emerge. And that's why we have a constitution where we have a right to bear arms. And if it goes too haywire, there will be another insurgent. So people are not going to just sit idle while President Trump does anything that he wants to do. And the courts are not going to sit idle, and the legislative branch and the judicial branch, because again, they can't impede, and they can say that he is treasonous and remove him from office. That's a part of our Constitution as well. And and he has not done anything to demand a removal because he is treasonous.
Huh. Do you think that SCOTUS should be expanded? Some people are saying primarily, like you said, it's political. A lot of Democrats are saying this, but now even Republicans are saying it after that birthright citizenship decision by SCOTUS. Do you think that SCOTUS should be expanded? I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seats?
So we just keep it, but remember, the Republican administration is in office. So say that bill gets through the House of Representatives, it gets through the Senate, and gets to the president's desk. He can put in power. He can put in those seats who he wants. So if you're trying to put people in those seats that will lean in a certain way in order for decisions to be made, you have to remember what administration is in charge. I just think that we have the people in charge that are sitting in the Supreme Court that are there. They are making decisions that some won't agree with and some will. They've overturned Roe versus Wade, whereas they didn't overturn the birthright citizenship. I think that there are a lot of decisions that are being determined, and when these decisions aren't met with aggression, or people don't like them, there's still other avenues to be able to get them done statewide.
So
and that's what
yes?
President Trump is doing. No, I don't think that you should expand it. I don't, because I just think, like, just with jurors, you got a jury of 12, but you can still get what do you call that when they a lot jury?
Hung jury.
So I don't think that you should expand it. But if you're going to do it underneath this administration, which will likely be in power for the next 20 years, if the Democratic Party thinks that it's going to be more favorable towards them, I think they'll be highly disappointed.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of agree with that. I think expanding the court politicizes it more than it may already be. I mean, there are a lot of people out there who might think like already that the Supreme Court is politicized, but then it just simply becomes, okay, let's say you expanded to 7, 8, 9 more Supreme Court justices, however many you want to add on there. And it's always going to be one of those things where whenever the political side doesn't get the results that they want from the court, they'll want to add more people. And so it just becomes this never ending situation until you got like 30 judges on the Supreme Court, which then, basically makes it, ridiculous. I mean, I think we've got to get back to a point where, and I don't know how we do this, and maybe it's changing the congressional processes for how judges get approved and things of that nature, or who is able to even make these recommendations. I think where you've got these sort of outside political agencies who are giving these presidents lists of judges and things of that nature that they need to select and put on there. There needs to be a better process to ensure that these judges are actually ruling on law and precedent and things of that nature, and not political leanings. Like, that's what you need the Supreme Court to be, not in the pocket for any particular party.
How do you do that?
I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's the only solution, because otherwise you continue to get into these situations of where I'm not even sure that having the president being the one to appoint Supreme Court justices is a good way to go about. Doing it. Maybe even looking at, I don't know who the right person is, but coming up with a better process of how these judges are selected. Maybe it's like some kind of bipartisan.
I believe it's in the Constitution, Kevin. That part is in the Constitution.
It could be. I mean, maybe that's
the president recommends them, but the Senate approves them.
It's in the Constitution.
Maybe that's something that's worthy of a constitutional amendment.
The president recommends them, but the Senate approves them. So there still has to be a second layer of approval. So, like I said, when you keep saying, "Oh, there's no layers and there's no separations," the president can't just say, "I want my best friend to be a Supreme Court justice," without that second layer of approval. And that's why we have these layers in place. So there's not eminent power at any level, at any specific layer. And so again, there's not a breakdown in structure. There might be a breakdown in some punk people as representatives, but there's not a breakdown in the layers of government. And that's why the Constitution has held all of these years.
But let's be real about that congressional process. That it's kind of a bit of a wink and a nod among congressional people that that like Mitch McConnell was really the first person to pull the card that he kind of did with denying Barack Obama the opportunity to put his appointed judge on the Supreme Court. Basically, what it has been is, even if you don't like the person who the president puts up, because there have been times where you've had Republican presidents who've had to go through democratically controlled, senates or whatever, and they've still pushed those judges through, regardless. They unless that person is just eminently unqualified for that position, they may question them. They may go through the dog and pony show of the congressional hearings, but usually the president gets on their picks. So let's not pretend like even that congressional process is not it pretends to be a resistance type thing, but it's more or less a rubber stamp process anyway.
But he still can't present somebody for the Supreme Court that isn't ultimately qualified. There's still qualifications. There's still qualifications that you have to have. He's not going to come here and Bloom to sit on the federal Supreme Court.
No qualifications.
Good. Did you say Kerry Bloom?
President. You got to be a lawyer.
I'm saying he's not going to come and get a juvenile judge to sit on the federal Supreme Court. There's still qualifications, but they still have to approve that person,
and they would
make sure that they understand the confines of the Constitution, and they have to have years underneath their belt. Have you ever looked at some of the backgrounds of some of these people that are sitting in the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I have.
These are some amazing people that have made some that prior to even coming into the Supreme Court had years of doing case law and
when you have a reputable president
and even helping to change that legislation. So again, I just think that's a an argument that has no weight.
Yeah. I think that hey, Terrace is with us. What's up, Terrace?
What's up, guys? I have about 45 minutes, so I figured I'd just jump
Terrace,
on.
what is the blue thing you say? Does Phil have this? What was that?
It's called CAP. When you're lying and you're telling falsities and you're doing your Phil Heimlich rhetoric, it's called.
I shouldn't have asked. That was my mistake.
In ebonics, it's called capping, Phil. When you're capping, you're on there talking.
Is that what you majored in?
No.
Charlie Winburn, he used to always say he majored in ebonics. That was one of his lines. But go ahead, continue.
Hey, Phil, what do you think? Should SCOTUS be expanded?
Absolutely not. I think you do that. It legally could, but you mess around. It destroys people's faith in the whole system. So I told him against it. But so here's something to remember. I think I mentioned this before. It used to be not that long ago that people only looked at the legal qualifications of Supreme Court people. They didn't look at whether they were liberal, conservative, pro-life, and all this crap. It was, is the person a qualified judge? Okay. And what happened then, I blame the Democrats, Ted Kennedy and others. There was this guy named Bork, who you may remember, and he's pretty extreme, but he was a legitimate, he had the qualifications, and they killed him. And from then on.
Why they kill him though?
Because his views were kind of to the right. Okay. But
kinda?
Well, I don't say kind of whatever you want. What I'm saying is, prior to that, they didn't look at people's political. They looked at how quality a judge, assuming they've been a judge or been in the court system, how high a quality, how respected a lawyer they are. Now what happens every time is that you're pro-life, you're pro-choice, you're liberal. That's not the way it's supposed to be on the courts. The courts, at least the federal courts, now the local courts, it's elected, but the federal courts, they're supposed to be the highest, as Rosemary said, they're supposed to be the highest quality kind of people. And unfortunately, it's become a big political deal, a political contest, instead of just getting the best legal mind like they used to.
Their job is to interpret the law, and it shouldn't have any bearing on if if this group is going to show up and picket me, or I'm getting these death threats over here, or Trump, this administration is going to be mad at me, or black people are going to be mad at me if I make this decision. It is based on the law and the decisions that come out. And that's at any layer of the court, whether it's juvenile all the way to the federal Supreme Court. Your job is to interpret the law, and in some cases implement discipline or punishment. And so, it shouldn't have all of this emphasis on what's going on the outside, because you were voted in, or you were chosen to be and appointed to be a judge, and that's your job. And I think that we make it very difficult in this day and age for them to do their job because of all of the harsh criticism, because of social media. But in the end, we still need to vote people that have enough integrity and resilience and fortitude to make a decision based on the law and what is in the best interest of the people in their area or the community, or in the best interest of the country when it comes to the federal Supreme Court, and really making the changes to change the Constitution.
See, the one thing that people admire about Republicans is that gangster in them. That's what I hear people saying all the time. They gangster. And what that just means is that when Republicans get in power, they do what they do it. They don't care what the public think. If it hurts a little bit, whatever, we're going to do
Well, look
it.
at Terrace. He rules that Dominion
Democrats
across
get in
the river
power
with an iron fist. That's an excellent example.
Well,
So when Democrats get in
You
power,
get on Terrace's bad side, believe me, it's just like Trump. I mean, you are in big trouble. This man, I'm telling you something. That's a great example right there.
So when if Democrats ever get in power, should they expand the Supreme Court? Absolutely. It ain't even a question. They need about 11 justices and or term limits, probably both, because the system has been corrupted.
Term limits is the most corrupting thing, because the lifetime appointment allows them not to worry about what kind of money they're going to make when they get out and so forth. The lifetime appointment is, which the founders put in, and you can't change without a constitutional amendment. That is absolutely critical.
I used to believe that. I don't think so anymore, but I understand where you're coming from. I used to believe that. From what I'm seeing right now, I don't believe so.
You know what happened if one of these guys was term limited? If I can just say, do you know, what do you think Harlan Crow and all of Trump's buddies would be offering them? Say, you take care of the rulings while you're there, and we're going to give you a job, basically going around we're going to pay you millions of dollars to do whatever. Okay. So with all due respect, I think term limits are not good for judges.
But it appears that might be already happening. I mean, there's so much reporting about at least the very least, the appearance of what appears to be corruption, where you got Supreme Court justices that's going on vacations. Billionaires are funding all kind of weekend lavish getaways, nonprofit organizations to the spouses of Supreme Court justices. Speaking about Clarence Thomas in particular, I mean, he has a lifetime appointment. They can't do anything about it, and so that's the reason why I say that we need to rethink that logic. But yeah, they should expand it to 11 if they get a chance to. Why? Because Republicans stole. I think they just played good politics, but they stole two seats from Democrats, from Barack Obama. So turnabout is fair play.
Do nothing. Politics. Can I say do nothing Democrats? Like you talk about the Democrats not doing anything. I
didn't say they didn't do anything.
I'm saying there's a moniker behind the Democrats' name. Do nothing Democrats. They was like, oh, we ain't worried about the Democrats. They ain't gonna do nothing anyway. You know what I'm saying? It's prime example of what you just example. Mitch McConnell tricked Barack Obama out of that vote. And I don't understand for the life of me why Barack Obama had the opportunity to do that, and he just didn't tell Mitch McConnell to go fly a kite. Instead, he said,
McConnell had the vote.
This is the boy, Terrace. I'm glad you only got 45 minutes. That limits the amount of nonsense that you can come on here and say on this podcast. First of all, that is the most ridiculous thing. And I agree with what Nathan said. Look, let's give Mitch McConnell his props for employing the political gamesmanship and using the power that he had to be able to deny Obama. It ain't right, but that's what they were able to do. And, when I hear people say gangster, they like Trump because he's gangster. Last time I looked, the definition of gangster is somebody involved in criminal or illegal activity who works outside the bounds of the law. Okay, so if that's what we like, if that's what we forward, then that says more about us than it does about Donald Trump.
Americans love gangsters.
The problem with Democrats is that Democrats always try to a fault They try to take the high road. They try to play within the rules. They try to exhibit statesmanship. And we've said this before, that when you try to play by the rules in a game where somebody don't give a damn about the refs, they making dirty plays, they doing whatever they can, they're saying, hey, I'll take the 15-yard penalty if it puts your best player out the game. You know what I'm saying? Like that. That's how Republicans have been playing politics under Trump. They didn't used to play that way. Let's not pretend like Republicans have always played that way. In the era of Obama building up to Trump, this is the way that Republicans have chosen to play the game now. And it's resonating with their folks because their folks were frustrated. Republicans were frustrated in the same way the Democrats are now because they felt like establishment Republicans weren't doing the things that they wanted them to do. And Donald Trump is doing that. And so what we have to admit as a public, if this is the way that we're going to go with gangster, then what we saying is to hell with the rules, to hell with statesmanship. We no longer believe in that as a voting public anymore. And we just want people who just going to go in and get it done. I hear that revisionist history about Obama, right? Looking at what Trump does. Well, why didn't Obama go back and do that? Because Obama was trying to be a good president. He was trying to be a good dude. He was trying to work within the confines of how
Terrence. All that being said, I agree with you, Kevin. That's why I said Obama got tricked by Mitch McConnell.
How was he tricked?
Let me finish, Phil. God dog. I can't even finish the statement because how can it go? Barack Obama could have nominated someone if he chose to do so.
He did nominate. He nominated Merrick Garland.
He married, yeah.
Merrick Garland, it's Supreme Court justice. He nominated Merrick
Garland, but they wouldn't give him a hearing in the Congress.
After that, he could have nominated someone else, but Mitch McConnell talked him out of it, saying you should leave that for the next president who's sitting. Because it's not
that is such a ridiculous. You don't even deserve to get to finish that, dude. That is
let the man finish. Let him finish.
No, that doesn't merit 5 more seconds.
McConnell let him know that you're not going to get anybody.
Exactly. He said McConnell basically said that. So, but for his base, for his Democratic base, instead of Obama just saying, you know what, Mitch. You're right. You got me. He should have fought, but the Democrats don't fight. You just sit there.
The fight? He couldn't win.
Nothing.
You couldn't win.
Nothing.
So you're telling me? So you're telling me? Wait a minute, Phil. So you're telling me if just because you can't win a fight, you wouldn't even try? So what are you, a Republican or a Democrat? I'm asking because you're sitting on a panel with people that. There's always been roadblocks, and no matter whether we can win the fight or not, we gotta break down those roadblocks.
I don't know what you're talking about.
So, as Barack being the first, he had to go through a lot to get into Harvard and to get to where he was. And if you weren't going to get in that seat and fight, then you shouldn't have been the first.
My apology. Rosemary, listen.
He was a pawn. I mean, he didn't fight. He didn't fight for a lot of things.
Merrick Garland. And Merrick Garland stood there just waiting for a hearing,
right.
And the hearing never came.
And then there was an election in November.
What he could have done, he did it.
He did it, and then there was an election in November, and Trump won.
Y'all acting like Obama had a pliable Congress. Let's forget he didn't have control over either houses of Congress at the end of his presidency. And you act like he had pliable, reasonable people that he was working with that he could influence and convince. They said on day one, Mitch McConnell was like, let's make this dude a one-term president. Now, they weren't successful in doing that, but they were successful in wresting control of Congress away from him, where they essentially made the last few years of Obama's presidency moot. And again, in fact, if you recall, he actually was one of the first presidents that started to flex the executive power of the presidency. And what did Republicans say about Obama when he did it?
No kings.
He need to take off that tan suit.
He thinks he's king. Look at him. He's doing all of this stuff without congressional approval. And Trump has taken that to the point when you open up that can of worms, the next guy is going to come on and he's going to take it up a notch. So Obama started doing it because Congress wouldn't work with him. And then Trump took it to the next level.
Yeah.
Right? He said, even when I got Congress, I'm gonna take all of these executive privileges. So this is the hypocrisy of the Republicans who want to say Obama is weak. Which is it? Was he weak or was he trying to be a king? Because when he flexed his executive power and did that, y'all said he was trying to be a king. So is he?
Can I just throw one thing in here quick?
See, y'all need to talk to people who don't pay attention to the news. Y'all can get away with that in some of the circles that you be around with.
Can I say one thing about something in the chat?
But I work in the news. I pay attention. I remember these things. So you can't say the man was weak, but he also was trying to be a king. Which is
real quick. Could I just ask one thing? It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Would you ask this guy, Black Lion, to stop referring to me as an old white man? Okay? That's my only request. Go ahead, continue.
I mean, I'll try, but he ain't gonna listen to me.
Show some influence. You're in charge here, Nathan. Come on. That's a stigma I don't want to live with. I'm talking about the old part. I don't care about the.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's all I got.
Sorry,
let's
I
move
interrupted
on.
you, folks. Sorry.
No, let's move on. Let's talk about this teen charge with the unaliving of a man in Lincoln Heights. And just another tragic story among a lot of tragic stories that we keep seeing here in the city of Cincinnati, including something that happened where it seemed like two individuals got into a fist fight. Then I watched the video. A man pulls out a weapon and shoots him point blank. The man he shot later died. And to this point, to my knowledge, something may have changed within the last 24 hours. Cincinnati police are saying that was an act of self-defense, but we'll get to that. But let's start here. Teen charge in Lincoln Heights. What's interesting is that, among a lot of interesting things about this, but one thing that stands out that we were kind of talking about in our own chat is the fact that this teenager was in a detention 10 days earlier prior to this shooting. Some are saying that this is an example of why, teenagers in that situation should get even more time, right? Because they might get out and commit a crime.
He didn't have any time. He got released right away.
Got released right away, huh?
To his parents, yeah. He didn't spend any time in 2020.
Well, I thought you spent 10 days there.
No, they released him 10 days before to his
10 days earlier, right.
10 days later, he murdered somebody.
Right. You're right. I already know that I misspoke on that. You're right. Correct. 15 years old, y'all. 15 years old. Some are saying at 15 he should be charged as an adult. So I want to get your thoughts on that. And any other thoughts that you might have. I know that Phil had something he wanted to say about this. Phil, the floor is yours.
Well, I have a feeling whatever camaraderie we've had up to this point in the show, and there hasn't been much, it's going to be over now. But okay, not to go too long on this, but my grandfather was a social worker in New York, and he worked with prisoners for like years, most of his life, in Sing Sing prison, all the worst prisons in New York, and he helped them, keep their families together, give them jobs when they get out, that kind of thing. But he said something to me one time that he said punishment needs to be sure and quick, meaning that if you want to discourage or deter someone from doing something more bad stuff, he doesn't have to have a terrible long sentence, but he needs immediate punishment to deter. That's really the gist of it. This kid, and I am as saddened about this kid's life is over as the guy he killed. And when I was a prosecutor in juvenile court, I saw this over and over. Kids would commit this guy had a long record. Look at his crimes, this kid. And it was clear each time it was no punishment, just released to his parents. And the sad thing, and I saw this over and over, kids would get away with stuff over and over. And then they figure, hey, there's no consequences for breaking the law. Then they do something like a rape or a murder, and they're gone the rest of their life. This kid, given that he had a pretty long criminal history, and then 10 days before he's picked up on a felony, I forget what the felony is. It was a felony. Okay. And what do? They release him to his parents. And by the way, if you read the history, he and his parents failed to show up for all kinds of hearings throughout his criminal history. Okay. But they release him to his parents. Now, the message, with all the respect that he got, I think, is, hey, I got away again. I can do whatever I want. Had they left him in 2020 for a couple weeks, which isn't like the death penalty, there's a good chance, or maybe on one of his previous ones, he would have got. That is not a fun experience. I've talked to enough people who've been through that. It's not a fun experience. There's life is safe, but it's not. It's a punishment. And that punishment, that lighter punishment that he's now going to get, might have sent a message to him. Hey, I don't want to go through that again. I'm not going to go do any more bad stuff. Now, that doesn't even include the fact that had they done that and left him at 2020 10 days before, that guy would be alive, the guy he shot. So my point is just I don't agree with the juvenile court constantly releasing people time after time because they get a sense of immunity, a sense of invulnerability, and it also puts the public at risk.
So I work with youth. So I I work with youth, and the first thing is the mother actually turned in her child, and I think
for the murder.
Yeah, for the murder. But I think that parents need to do more of that, because I think that there's parents that know that their kids are killers and have committed these crimes, and they are in the protection of their children, and they're just not turning their children in. It is something very difficult to do, but that first teaches your children about integrity and morals and taking responsibility for the consequences of your choices. It begins at home before we start looking at agency. And I run an agency for kids because I get a little bit upset when I constantly hear the community got to do this, agencies need to do this, we need men to step up in the community. No, we need fathers to go back into the home, and that starts with women, but that's a whole nother subject. But let me go here. When it comes to youth and crime, it is about rehabilitation and reunification with families. If we are going to punish youth, you have to begin by changing the law, because over time, what we have ignored is the laws basically said if a youth goes into the prison system, they are far more likely not to change their lives.
We're not talking about the prison system.
No. Can I finish? Can I finish? Because I didn't interrupt you. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
Phil.
Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, Nathan.
But legally, the judges only have so much. Now, when it comes to this, you have to also look at when that team first started. These were low-level misdemeanor crimes.
Not the last one. It was a felony.
Again, you are interrupting. The final crime that he had just gotten locked up for was theft, car theft, I believe. But when it comes to murder here in Ohio, it is up to that judge to determine if they're going to bind that child over.
That's a different issue. The bind over is not what we're talking about.
You are talking over me, and unless you read up on this and actually,
I've read up on it. Believe me, I lived it for years.
If you're actually dealing with teens with guns, because remember, I deal with teen parents. Hold on, I deal with teen parents whose boyfriends and those teens have guns. And I've also experienced girls that are more violent than men in this day and time. So again, but what happens is when they get into the courts, it is already established that those kids are not supposed to be kept in jail based on the law. So the judges have limited.
Then why is he locked up now on the murder? Why did they lock him up now?
Because he murdered somebody, but he's only sitting in jail until his court date, until a judge determines whether she's going to let him out on the box
on the felony theft. Could have done the same thing 10 days before.
But at the same time, that judge listened. She looked at the law. She looked at his record. There's, what do you call that? Pre-trial, where the parents come in or not and say, what do we do? Is this child a danger to the public? At the time, that child that youth didn't have any gun charges. They had basic theft. They had maybe runaway. They maybe had break-in. They
had assault and domestic violence too.
Riding on a bike, slapping somebody on the butt. That doesn't account for murder, and that doesn't account for that child being put into a prison
violence.
system.
Don't say they didn't have violent history.
Hold on. Because what the court system also doesn't want to do is present additional trauma for youth. I am not saying that a lot of these youth.
Poor kid. You're right. I feel so sorry.
You are missing what I'm saying, because I also raised 2 Black children in the hood. So this is coming from a mother. This is coming from a person that has to deal with violence, and this is coming from a person that has overseen more than 3,000 teen families in Greater Cincinnati. So I think that I deserve my time, especially when I have a black son that just was able to live to 25.
Is this kid black? I don't even know. What does that do?
So I think I get a right to say what I want to say.
Is.
I think I should get a right to say what I want to say.
What's his race? Do you even know?
Because again, when we're looking at youth violence, it is a higher percentage of African-American black boys that are committing these crimes. So what I'm saying, it is very difficult to lock these kids up and bind them over to be sent to adult prison.
You're
the
mixing things up.
Of it. I'm not saying that it shouldn't happen. I'm asking you, how do we begin to change the law, especially as we've seen an increase in these type of crimes?
May I respond? May I respond to that?
So if I can say,
let's Phil get in, Kevin. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Kevin, let Phil get in real quick, if you can. Can we let Phil get in? Go ahead. Let Phil respond.
Phil already been in. I ain't got it. Phil let it off. I ain't been able to say nothing.
You coming straight up. You're in the hitter's deck.
I'll just be quick. The issue, as far as it isn't changing the law, the decision about whether you keep a kid in 2020 through to his trial or whether you release him is a discretionary decision. What I'm saying is, when my experience is not always, but these decisions are not poorly made, and this is a classic example. Okay, it is not a question of changing the law; it's a question of exercising different discretion. And
so you mean a judge is supposed to have an imaginary ball to know if this kid is going to go shoot somebody?
Let me just say something.
That's
one
ridiculous.
Process point.
That's ridiculous.
So
every kid that does any crime should be kept behind bars. That means that when I ran away from home at 15 and then I sat there and beat up my sister and got charged with felonious assault, I should have sat in jail for 15 days or whatever that is.
Actually, it might. If you
ludicrous. And the law doesn't give her the right
to jump in, because what y'all are doing is always the ability. It's always the ability to Monday morning quarterback. It's always the ability to Monday morning quarterback. It's just like in a game. People want to always Phil, shut up, man. You've been talking for 15 damn minutes, man. Can I get 5 minutes on this subject?
Sure.
Good Lord. Now people always want to point to that one play and say that was the determiner of the game. So a lot of people who want to say, hey, this kid was in detention 10 days before. If the judge had just done something different, this guy might still be alive. That's that same type of revisionist Monday morning quarterbacking of the thing. What I want to say is, and I don't know how many people saw it, but the mother made a post on Facebook. And one of the things that she talked about was, and not defending the rightness or wrongness of her son's actions, but what she talked about was, and I think this is where Rosemary kind of comes in, is that she was a single mom whose dad was nowhere in the picture on this thing, where she had been crying out for help for her son, where she had called the police on her son several times, where she had been crying out for help for the community to help her. She clearly had a situation with a young man who was out of control, who did not have any sort of positive male influence in the form of a father in the household, and just was in over her head with her ability to control her son. Right? So this goes beyond a judge's decision on whether to keep a kid in detention for 10 days. And so this is why I think where our problem, where if we're going to get serious about saving young men and reducing our crime in the city, that it has to be more than talking about whether a kid should be tried an adult or changing the laws or blaming this organization or that organization. And of course, it starts with the home. But you got to deal with the reality of these situations. And I say oftentimes enough, we don't go back and we just look at the verdicts and what the sentencing is. And we don't spend enough time in really trying to figure out, where did things go off the rails with these young men, and where can the interventions happen sooner? Because once they get into the court, it's too late. I mean, it's too late. Look, this young brother had a bunch of interactions.
It shouldn't be too late,
and I don't know why the mom didn't show up in court. Maybe if she had shown up in the court, and had expressed what she expressed on Facebook about the difficulty she was having with her son, maybe the judge makes a different decision. Maybe the judge puts her and her son in touch with some resources to help. I don't know. But as you piece this thing, as you walk this thing back and you take a look at all of the pieces, we got to start having more sophisticated conversations. If we're really serious about trying to save our young men and reduce crime, we can't get into these simplistic, oh, the judge just made the wrong decision. No, there were many touch points in this young man's life since the age of 12 where you could have.
He got away with everything. That's the touch points. Everything.
Still.
It doesn't
And sometimes that's going to happen.
That doesn't mean he got away. That means that, because you have to look at each one of these situations as individual situations and choices at the time. And I'm going to speak that from, I was a youth, like I work in nonprofits, so I'll let people from Diversion come work at Rosemary's Babies, right, for their volunteer hours through the court, so that they can remove, like, if they do so many hours, their crime will be excused or whatever. But, you know, there was a time that I switched tags, or I let something go out the store underneath the cart or whatever. But again, it's based on the choices that are in front of you. And we can say that that's influence. We can say it's whatever. But a lot of times we piecemeal all these things together, and we put this blanket stereotype over the kid. And sometimes it's just a bad seed. So we need to look at each one of these individual incidents. But it's at the same time, I still say it begins at home. And so, and it doesn't begin with, oh, it's at home, let me find an agency, or using the courts to discipline our kids. Because I'll tell you, when my mom had me locked up at 15, then had me locked back up at 16 for runaway or whatever, it didn't help me. It made me become rebellious, and it made me feel like I didn't have another outlet. So I chose to go down a trajectory, hence teen parent at 16. But what happened if at that moment my mom was like, okay, what's the issue? Or where can I step in and intercede? So again, we cannot use the court to discipline our children, but at the same time, we do have to hold these youth accountable that have these weapons, as well as the youth. We need to hold them even more accountable for those that do modifications to their weapons, putting switches and things such as that. There should be harsher crimes. I'm glad to see that they're opening back up Hillcrest, but I also think that there should be a pipeline for these gun-toting teens to go into the military or go into boot camps, and that the parents are responsible for going through these programs as well, because they are your children. They are not ours. And even as a community, we can only do so much outside of the home.
That's true.
Before I get off here, I got to get off here, but I want to say something about, like, with this subject. At 10 years old, I feel like as a barber who's been watching kids develop for the past 30 years, I can tell which trajectory path the kid's going to take. And it's very important, like Rosemary said, for parents, not just the moms. And she's a single mom, the dad wasn't around. It's very imperative for the parents, fathers, and mothers allowing fathers to have access to the children unsupervised. I believe that's one of the root causes in this situation. And I say that again, mothers allowing fathers to have unsupervised,
we don't.
Hold on, let me finish, because I'm gonna get off here. I gotta get off here. I want to finish this thought. And also, this kid, if he would, or the parents would go through something like Bluegrass Challenge Academy, which my son went through when he was going wayward at 14, 15 years old. We sent him to Bluegrass Challenge Academy, which is a military boot camp. What that message sent to the rest of 4 of my children, boys, that if you start messing up, we're going to send you to. It sent a clear message for this lady that, or for the judiciary system. This could be a clear path that we could start identifying these things at 10, 11, 12 years old in middle school, to where we can identify these kids that have defiancy, and we can say, hey, here's another option. Maybe scared straight, maybe something like that. But when they get in trouble, slapping them on the wrist and sending them back to someone who's overwhelmed. My mentorship program, and I'm going to get off here after I say this. There's people in my mentorship program, and I look at their mothers, the single moms, and they look at me like I can save their kid. And it breaks my heart because they're overwhelmed. They got 4 kids, a son that's being disrespectful to not just the community, but to her, which it probably does her some good when he's out of the house or in jail, because she gets more structure at home. So those are some things that we should think about before we start condemning these kids, Phil, and putting it, saying they're.
I agree with everything you've said so far.
But
everything. I think boot camp is a great idea. It's the same thing as it's a punishment.
But since we don't have that,
yeah,
we don't have that.
I agree. Well, we need it. I don't know what they have.
Since we don't have it, the court system's overexhausted. So what are they doing? They're running these kids in and out. And let's talk about white supremacy and the criminal justice complex system. They don't care about people who look like us. So it's very important for Rosemary to say that she raised a black son, because it's very important out there when we're talking about teen charges.
Do we know what race?
You know what? But here's what I would say. Here's what I would say on that, Terrence. And you said a lot of good things, much better than your Obama take. I have to give you credit for that. But I think one of the things that we gotta start looking at, and if we're talking specifically about the black community, and I was thinking about this the other day, is we got to stop waiting for people to come save us, and we got to save ourselves, and we got to save our children. So props to Rosemary for what she's doing. And for those sorts of things that you talk about, if we need those kinds of military boot camps and things that are alternatives for our kids, instead of waiting for somebody else to generate those things, then we need to build them and lobby for federal dollars or state dollars or local dollars to help fund that, and then get those who have a passion and a skill to be able to deliver that, to be able to offer those types of alternatives for our kids. So we have to take a little bit more control instead of waiting for others to initiate and build those things. If we feel like we need them in our communities, then that's what we need to do. I also think there's another larger question that we need to continue to say. And I say this all the time, and it's unpopular, and I'll probably get some pushback on this. But there are some things that go on in terms of the way, for example, if you are a woman with 4 kids and you are overwhelmed, there's got to be some teachings, there's got to be some conversations that we begin to have with our kids, that you cannot be 18, 19, 20 something with 4 kids and think that that's going to work out well for you financially or in any other type of way. And particularly when you don't have a man in the house. And this doesn't just apply to black folks, because white folks do this too.
Oh, look, that's a success sequence, huh?
That's the success sequence.
That's what Republicans want to push in Ohio public schools, the success, getting married before you have a child.
I mean, what's wrong with that? Everybody does it a little differently.
What's wrong with that? But
everybody does it a little differently, Nathan. But there's a reason why. There's a reason why certain people are having fewer and fewer kids today. It is a financial and economic decision, and there's just the realities of the fact of what it costs to be able to really raise and care for and take care of 4 kids with 2 people in the household, let alone 1 person. Those are just the economic realities of what life is. So I think, and I will just speak from my own experience, not having children up until the point that I was able to be a professional and support myself and potentially some other people made all of the difference, in my opinion, in my flexibility to do a lot of things, right? That's just the reality. It's not like trying to tell people how to live, but it is giving people good financial, societal, economic advice on. Nobody's saying you can't have 4 kids, but understand this: if you go out and have 4 kids, it's going to be hard for you, particularly if you're only working this kind of job without some type of government assistance, right? So it's practical, pragmatic teaching of life planning, right? When did life planning become a negative thing? Since when did trying to give people good advice on how to plan your life, like your finances and anything else, when did that become political, right wing or left wing? That should be common sense. And so we got to get up out of this, particularly if we care about our community, that we need to talk to our kids about sex and not having babies before a certain age and the challenges.
What makes you think people aren't having these conversations, Kevin?
Huh?
I said, what makes you think people are having these conversations?
Because of what I see.
Life happens.
Because of what I see.
But life happens. Life happens.
Life happens, Nathan.
Yeah.
But listen, people who plan and who make, look, if I'm a brother, and I know this, Nathan, and you know this just as well, that you got a lot of brothers out there. I practice safe sex, okay? When I was out there in the streets, I never got with a woman and I wasn't strapped up. I'm just keep it real talk, keep it a buck. And you know the reason, and I wasn't relying on her, right? I wasn't relying on her with the birth control because I did not want life to happen to me for me to slip up and have a baby before I wanted to. So I made sure I stayed strapped. A lot of these young brothers out here don't care. And there's a lot in the culture about getting it raw and all this other kind of stuff. I'm telling you what these young people be talking about. You can idealize it if you want to. And so you got a lot of young brothers out here making bad decisions, not protecting themselves, not protecting women. And so, yes, life is going to happen if you don't prepare for life. So that's what I say. I know what I see out there. And that's what makes me say, like, when you say, how do you know these conversations? If they are happening, then you got a whole lot of young people out there who are just saying, bump the advice, I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's a whole other conversation.
Well, I got something to say, and then I got to jump off. But because, again, I work with teen parents. I work with that population, but I also was a fourth generation teen parent. And I ensured that my kids didn't have kids before their time, as teen parents. But I agree with the success strategy, not in a way of offense, but just how it projects a path for your life. And so I just recently had some conversations with Eric Conroy after this panel. I called Eric Conroy, like, you like Phil Heimlich, but and he said some things about you too, Phil. But
were they nice things? Were they nice things?
Of course.
Because you're a rhino.
He left my house after that interview. He didn't look.
Yeah, I wouldn't even speak on. We're gonna pray off what he said. But I did speak recently to Eric Conroy, Mike Adioso. I was talking to because that legislation is within the Ohio State House or whatnot, the success strategy, and I think that is still important from an economic standpoint. And that's where I was saying, quit pushing it like, oh, these teen girls shouldn't be having babies. But if you look at it from an economic point, even when, I run Rosemary's Babies Company and I teach these teen parents while they have already had children, our whole point is to tell them not to have additional children before their time and to look at the struggle of not having a husband. I was a teen parent and I believed in the American dream. And I was like, I got to go find a husband. I don't want to raise these kids on my own. I also understood the demands of raising a Black son, but I understood the demands also of raising a daughter without a father, because that's where that daddy's girl and, that mama's boy kind of thing come from. So you need both of those people, even if not in the home, just a part of their lives. But I think that the success strategy has some bearing to it. On August the 1st, we're actually having an event at Holloway House where there will be representatives. Eric Conroy will be there, and a few other representatives to actually tour our facility, Holloway House, and have these conversations on youth and the outcomes for younger parents, that's teen parents and just younger people in general, when it comes to maternal health and families, and revealing what family struggles under this administration when we are limiting income-based housing and putting limitations on the amount of government assistance that you're able to have. And now, remind you, I ran on that as my campaign, but now we're going to have that conversation within Holloway House on August the 1st. So if anybody wants to come, let me know. But I just think that that's vitally important. The other thing that I want to say is this too. Like my son, when I did a lot of research, and at a certain age in like Africa, when young men are like 9 years old, they go into the wilderness with their grandfathers and their fathers to learn to become men. I made sure that my son had his dad around him, his grandfathers around him. He was blessed to have both of his grandfathers and his great grandfather in his life. And when my son was 13, when he started to struggle into leaving, elementary and going into junior high, you see these shifts. And when I started to see those shifts into puberty, people said, let them figure it out. At the time that my son started having those shifts, I started being around my children even more. Most of the time, parents let them put the headphones in, go in a room and close the door. That's when you need to be more instrumental so that those other feeds aren't going into their life. I actually sent my son to live with his grandfather for the summer to learn to become a man. Then when my son went through things at the age of 18, I sent him back down to North Carolina to live with his grandfather because, again, I thought it was vitally important for him to be around somebody. While my dad had experienced a lot in life, he knew what it meant to be a man. He knew what it meant to have these priorities. And I looked within the family before I looked outside of the home for some program. Because, and what I'll say about programs is, we don't know these people that are overseeing these programs and what personal issues they have and mental health issues they have before we go reliant upon other people in the community. So again, there's measures that happens, but as parents, we need to first be the first one to address it. And I would just say for anybody that has a son, hug your son every day. Tell him you love him every day, because even with my son being 25, whenever I see a news story that says black boy shot, the first thing I'm doing is calling my black son and saying, are you home? So as parents, we need to know where those kids are too. We still need to know who their friends are. We still need to bring back some of that old school mentality and turn it into this new school mentality so that we can save our own children.
So what we got though, Rosemary, and a lot of what you said is great there. When I think about that, I think what we've got to recognize though is that in some areas we are in a cycle. So we are in a cycle of where you've had babies having babies. And so what you talk about, that generation of where you had the dad and the grandfather, and you could take them out in the wilderness and all of that, what you have in some areas, not all, but in some areas, particularly where we're having challenges as cycles of young men who haven't gone through that process, who have babies at young ages, and then they're gone. So there is no father or there is no grandfather around to take them through that process. And so who they wind up learning about manhood from can vary in a lot of different ways. And so that home structure that you talk about, which is why I'm just adamant about how we have to get started. We have to have interventions early in these kids' lives.
But I think that's a misconception, because the number of teen parents has decreased, and you're seeing a lot more women having children at a later age. Yeah. And they're having these children because, remember, let's not forget what the Democratic Party did to Black women. You can have a baby on your own, independent freedom, all of these things, and a baby was an accessory, and now they're having children in their 30s and 40s without having the proper structure for their family.
Is that feminism, or is that the Democratic? Is that the Democratic Party?
I think that it was.
I think it's feminism. Maybe glommed onto by the Democratic Party.
Yeah, at a certain point, it was like, I want to get my career first, then go get the husband, and then go get the baby. And so I answer phone calls every day from women that are having.
Isn't that the success story? Isn't that the success sequence?
No. The success sequence includes two parents or being in the home. It does not stand where one person is raising a child on their own.
Wait a minute.
That's the difference with the success sequence.
So you tell me it's wrong to tell women to go out here and get a career?
No, I'm saying, and I'm not saying women can't do it on their own if they're financially able and capable. I think that before a woman has a child, and remember, I was a teen parent. So before a woman has a child, I think that she definitely needs to look at her financial situation. And if she's not in a financial situation to be able to take care of that child, she needs to have condoms in her own purse.
You know what? There's an interesting dynamic, and this is probably
I'm gonna still listen, but I really do got to jump off. But I'm still listening.
Okay. Thank you so much, Robert.
Yeah.
Hey, we got Fame with us. What's up, Fame?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Doing well.
What's up, brother? Good to see you. Long time no see.
Hey, exactly, Kev. I wanted to talk about that. Kevin left out the story that he told earlier was 100% accurate. That is what happened, and but he left out the funniest part. Aries started messing with that woman who was sitting at our table. She's with her husband, and it basically said that Aries and I were gonna have sex with that woman, just giving her all types of hell in front of her husband. I'm like, all right, man, it's kind of uncomfortable. I don't know these people. You know what I mean? But it was a good show, I thought. But he used some old jokes. I didn't appreciate that. He recycled some jokes from years ago that I noticed, but it is what it is.
Yep. So give it a little more context around that. There was a white lady and her husband that was sitting at the same table with Fame. And at one point when Aries was questioning Fame about some information he was sharing, the white lady jumped in and
Yeah.
answered for Fame. And so Aries Spears really went off on that. He's like, white people always trying to jump in and save black people or represent black people or something like
Yeah.
that. And so that's how the dynamic got going between Fame, this white lady at the table, and Aries Spears, because he just kept rolling it up after. And so after she spoke up for Fame, the next thing was, hey man, she acted like that. That means she won't give you some, and then it just kind of rolled from there. So you're right, that probably was the funniest part of that whole interaction. But yeah.
But I'll say one more thing about that too. I said if he goes too far on me, I'm gonna deflect to Kevin. I'm gonna tell him, hey, there's a very important man in this room over here to my left. He's the editor in chief of the newspaper of record for this area. Make fun of him, leave me alone. But it was all good natured. But I just want to say this: I've been trying to get at y'all for a couple weeks now. I thought that was a very porous effort with DeRay McKesson. I don't know why y'all was supporting dude. Everything he does is about destruction. Black Lives Matter. He came out. He wanted the nuclear family destroyed. This little mess that he's on now, 01 or whatever it's called. He's all about
Campaign Zero.
Yeah, campaign 0. He's all about destroying black folks. This dude is not for us.
How is that about destroying black folks?
Because he's about destroying civility and community. You're not gonna say that campaign 0 ain't nothing but Black Lives Matter remixed with a Diddy remix, if you will.
So Fame, let me just say, I don't think that. So for me, I'll just tell you the position that I was coming from, and my position has been pretty consistent on this. Regardless of what you think about Campaign 0, their methodology or whatever, my main point on the stats was, and what I gave him props for, was at least beginning the conversation, putting it out there and examining and analyzing data that nobody in the city had analyzed or examined in 17, 18 years. And so if nothing else, Campaign 0 deserves credit for getting the conversation jumping off, because absent their report, the city wasn't going to touch this. They weren't even looking at that data, right? And so to me, the whole thing is about, hey, let's look at the data. Okay, we've seen what Campaign 0 had to say. The city's doing their independent thing. Let's see what they come back with. And let's have a discussion about what's really going on. Is bias in policing getting better? Is it getting worse, or is it about the same? So it wasn't about saying, hey, I'm on board or I agree with everything that you're doing or whatever. I mean, I think it's a mistake to be dismissive of them and the data that they produce because you don't agree with what they stand for or whatever. The data is the data, in my opinion. But that's where I was coming from with it. I appreciated the fact that he was doing something that our city should have been doing. Like, if I'm the city and I'm on my P's and Q's, I'm ready for a dude like DeRay McKesson when he shows up, because I done already crunched the numbers. I done already done my analysis. So when he comes out with his report, if it's wrong, I got my own data that I can throw out there and say, this is why his methodology don't work and why it's messed up, because we've already looked at it. We've already been tracking it. City ain't done none of that. They was caught flat-footed, and then once he came to him with the report, they scrambling trying to explain it. That's not good government, in my opinion.
No, indeed, some of that I'll agree with. I'm just saying that's why I've always said that Phil is the heart and soul of the show, because he was the only one that had the heart to call out DeRay. Y'all was just kind of more like, y'all just kind of was just, the rest of the panel seemed to be like, oh, DeRay's our hero. We're here. He's going to save us again. Him and Iris are going to form Voltron and stop all this nonsense. And Phil was up there like, hold on, bro. We know you already. And we know what you do. And you're not necessarily good people. That's all. I just thought that,
Why are you
Phil,
jocking Phil?
I just think he got more heart than any of y'all. 70, 80-year-old white man got more heart than any of y'all when it comes to this show. Now, I don't know what he do. What were you
But you
gonna say?
didn't
I'm
answer
sorry.
my question. Well, why are you jocking Phil? Because clearly he was wrong about D-Ray. He had
I just
no logical position whatsoever. His whole position was, you guys, he read something on a website that ticked him off. He didn't even pay attention to the numbers whatsoever. It's very completely illogical.
Miss
Here
Right.
here you are jocking him.
Okay, I'm jocking. Okay, it be like that sometimes. Somebody fancies you enough, you'll jock them. You know, I'm sure somebody will come through and
Yeah,
jock
as
you
long as
like
you
you jocked
committed,
DeRay.
man. And see, now I know where you're coming from. So now
Okay,
I know
well,
not
yeah.
to pay attention. When it comes to Phil, don't pay attention to nothing you got to say because you jocking. I got it.
Oh yeah, I'm
You're right.
jocking.
We good.
I thought he
We
did his
good.
I thought he did his lineage and legacy very well. You know that his father created for him years ago. I thought he's done it well. You know, some people don't play well on their on their legacy. I thought he's done
Mm,
all that well. But let
mm,
me ask you this: if you knew a guy
mm.
like DeRay, you know what Black Lives Matter was about.
Do you know D-Ray?
This, huh?
Do you know D-Ray personally, or are you
I
talking
don't
about
know
what
him
you've seen?
personally.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, you know about you know what he's about. I mean,
Yeah.
it was clear on Black Lives Matter. You gonna give him another? You gonna let him spin the block with you when he wants to destroy the nuclear family the first time? Then he comes back with a remix. You gonna let him
How does he
spin
want
the
to
block
destroy the
again?
nuclear family?
I'm sorry because it was on Black Lives Matter mission statement clearly
Oh,
on
you
their
just like
website.
Phil. Oh, he was on their mission statement? Okay.
On their website,
On their website.
on their official website.
And what was on the website?
That was one of their goals. That
The goal
the
is to destroy the nuclear family.
yes,
I think
yes,
it's
it was
possible you might have misread that. Is that
okay.
possible at all? I'm not saying it's true. Is it possible
Is what possible?
that you misread that or you're misinterpreting? Because it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
No, because it was made in several news reports as well about that was their mission statement. These were bad people. These were gay people trying to come up off African Americans, the African American struggle. Basically, people who made bad decisions trying to come up on African Americans who didn't have a choice in being African American.
So your assertion that they were trying to destroy the black nuclear family is based on some LGBTQ connection that you making with the leadership? Is that what I just heard you say?
No, it's on a connection that was on their website, sir. I promise you, that's on there. That's on.
But you mentioned their sexual preference status. So I'm
Well,
assuming
yeah,
that.
none of they're like Cincinnati news black male anchors. None of them were straight. None of them were heterosexual. You
Uh,
know, there's no black male heterosexuals on TV news in Cincinnati. Just like Black Lives Matter, there were no heterosexuals that were leaders of the group. Everybody was
yeah.
gay.
Oh, everybody was gay, huh?
Even locally, if Nathan remembers his own show, the guy who I had a beef with,
Who'd you have a beef with?
Brian.
Brian.
Brian Taylor, remember the guy up there comparing us to dogs?
I know
Oh,
Brian, yeah.
local Black Lives Matter guy, right?
Yeah. Hey, Brian
Yeah.
Taylor cut from a different cloth, man. Just letting you know. I'm just
Uh,
telling you.
hey man, hey, iron burns the hell out of silk. I know that much. But
I'm just telling you. That
I'm just
brother's
telling
all
you.
iron. I'm just telling you, but
I
okay.
hear you, man. I hear you. I
Okay.
hear that. Perhaps he is. I don't know. Maybe he's a hell of a guy. But I just feel like that Black Lives Matter was kind of whack. But what we're talking about now,
Sarah says you
basically,
jock and Phil because he got a Mercedes.
okay,
Sierra
maybe
writes, this
so.
call has to be sponsored by Phil.
Maybe. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm more enamored with Phil than the rest of you all. I just find Phil to be more relatable.
That's sad, Fang.
I can give you some thoughts about it, but you would probably take it like it's an insult, and I'm not gonna do it. Not gonna do
I
it. I can
find
give
Phil
you a
to be
few
much
thoughts.
more relatable than y'all.
He
You know,
is. Me too.
if we keeping it a buck, as Kevin likes to say. You know, but as far as what you were talking about these juveniles, you know, and these women with kids and all this and that, a father being there present daily is obviously that's more ideal. But if he can't be there, the onus is on the mom to just not be a toxic individual. Just teach your kids the right to make proper decisions, and they should be fine in life to make good decisions. You know, yeah, stereotypically, you like a man there, so show him how to, fix a flat tire when it's time to, and paint drywall, all that old goofy stuff.
Who taught you
You
how to
know,
fix a flat tire?
I don't know. I think I just learned it, by doing patches on my bike.
Yeah.
from friends
Okay.
that were slightly older. You know, like I was, you know, there wasn't a lot of kids on my street, so I was like 9 hanging with 13-year-olds.
All right.
You know, so but yeah,
Well,
but I've been trying
do
to
you?
get at y'all for weeks about that
I'm glad you got in, bro.
D-race
Are you?
stuff. Yeah.
Listen, let me ask you a quick question. How do you feel about America as we celebrate America's 250th?
Oh, see that there's that 10-15 per unassimilated portion of me that's like, you know, 250 years ago I wouldn't have been celebrating nothing. But I you know, America is all I know, so I enjoy it. You know, if it's what they call that that Patty Hearst had what they call that not survivors remorse. You know what I'm talking about? Stockholm
Survivor's
syndrome.
remorse.
No,
Oh,
Stockholm
Stockholm
syndrome.
syndrome.
If it's
Yeah.
that, if it's that, then I was born into it and had no really way out of it. I was gonna acquire that anyway. You know, but you know, America. I like America. I'm here. I feel like I've got an opportunity to do mostly anything I wanted to do. Everything I've wanted to do, I've done. Everything I set out to do, I've done. So I've never been stopped. You know, through racism like that, stopped me directly like that. You know, as when you let the racism get involved with you, that's when it takes over. So you just got to make, you know, we just got to make an extra step a lot of times in what we're doing. But on the whole, I'm good with America. I don't, you know, I know that's not going to be a popular answer, but I'm good with America.
Hey, your answer's your answer. Hey,
Yeah, and
Yeah,
fam, I appreciate you, bro.
I
yeah.
appreciate y'all.
Yep. I don't know that it's necessarily an unpopular answer. You know, yesterday, when I was doing Lincoln, Pharaoh encouraged me to go back and listen to Frederick Douglass's speech about the 4th of July, which interestingly enough, I had never heard before. And I was trying to figure out like, man, how did I miss that? Because I take a lot of, and maybe I did get it and just wasn't paying attention that day in class. I don't know. But for whatever it's worth, I went back and listened to it. And I was really more or less fixated on the title, right? Which is the title is like basically paraphrasing is what does the 4th of July mean to the slave, pretty much. And I was like, well, you know, that's interesting because I'm always one who, particularly as a writer, thinks about the context and the times in which things were written. And I thought the title of that was interesting because, like, you know, Pharaoh was saying, hey, it applies to us today. But I was thinking about Frederick Douglass wrote that in the context of where Black people were at that particular point in time, which is in slavery, right? So what does the 4th of July mean to a slave? And so I started thinking about that and I was like, okay, well, let's remix that because we're not in physical bondage. We're not in slavery anymore. So what does the 4th of July mean to a Black American in 2026, right? Because I think that's a different framing of that saying. And I started thinking about that. And I was thinking about this about, you know, maybe kind of trying to do some conversations, talk to a few people and maybe put a little bit of remix on that, you know, thinking about it from the perspective of Black people in 2026, like what does the 4th of July, because that's really the question that we're kind of wrestling with right now. And is there any difference in how Frederick Douglass viewed it, you know, all of those years ago versus how we view it today? And is it fair to view it through that same lens of very different conditions and situations, which is why I think you get kind of the responses that Fame has had, kind of like what I've said is that, you know, there's very little denial in the fact that conditions have changed from when Frederick Douglass gave that address. Now, maybe some people might disagree with that and say, nah, ain't nothing changed. But I think there are some elements that are hard to dispute have changed. You know, we're no longer held by slave owners on a plantation in chains, being whipped, hung at will, all of those sorts of things. And I'm sure people will point to individualized incidents where that might still occur. Modern, as Clarence Thomas said, modern day lynchings, so to speak, but certainly not on the word of the day scale of what we saw, you know, back in those days. So it was just a thought that I had just in thinking about the context and the times in which he wrote that. And if Frederick Douglass were alive today, let's just say if he was living in 2026, you know, what would he still have that same point of view, or would it be slightly different?
I don't know. I don't know, Kevin.
Yeah, these are the mental rabbit holes I go down, Nathan, when I look at this stuff and I think about it. I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder what the take would be in 2026, given where Black people are today versus where they were then when he gave that address.
What you got cooking for the weekend? Just hanging out a little bit?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm trying to stay out of this heat. You know, I think I mentioned my wife is up in Detroit. She's going to that Chris Brown.
Oh, okay. You got
Usher concert. Ain't my bag, really. So
okay, house to yourself, risky business. That's old school.
Risky business, man. Sliding across the button up in some drawers, sliding across the floor, dancing. You know,
I mean, when I got old enough and everybody's out the house, I did the exact same thing. I just had to, right? Slid across the floor, had the glasses on. I just wanted to feel it for a second. Of course, I didn't have the girls and the party and all that stuff happening, but that moment was everything when I was younger, man. It's like you wanted to recreate it. People were like, what are you talking about? Talking about risky business. One of the old school movies, I won't say best ever, but old school movie, Tom Cruise, one of his first. Go check it out. I don't mind dating myself. I'm just glad I'm here. So just chilling, huh? Wife away, just gonna do your own thing?
Yep, gonna do my own thing.
Sierra writes, your wife left you on a holiday to see Usher. Yep. I didn't think about that. Usher and who else gonna be there? Chris Brown? Hey, that's
she gave me the option. She gave me the option to go, but I just can't see spending that kind of money on tickets for people that I just kind of like. You know, right. I mean, the amount of money that they was asking for. Nah, like I said, that's her thing. Huh?
That's a heck of a concert, though. Chris Brown and Usher.
I'm sure it'll be a great show. Like, and I don't.
A heck of a show.
Again, I don't dislike their music. I enjoy their music, but for what those tickets cost, for me to go out and spend my money is get on a concert these days. It's got to be somebody that I really like, because I would rather take that money and go do something I really like versus doing something I kind of like.
I understand. Yeah. I'm not a big concert person for a lot of different reasons these days, but yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah. All right. Yeah, well,
what about you? What you got cracking?
Same thing. Family out of town. You know, they out of town, so we're in the same situation. We should link up, actually.
I was gonna say that, man.
We got to link up anyway and talk about some other stuff. So that could be a great opportunity. I'm thinking, like, I mean, for me, Sunday would be better.
Okay,
does that work for you at all?
Yeah, let me know. You know, obviously, I had a church thing, but after that, you know, it's kind of wide open. Okay, and man, I want to address Roz. Man, Roz hit me up in the comments. You know, when I was talking about, you know, shucking and jiving back in the day, doing my thing, protecting myself. And he made a comment. He said, "Sinning preacher." And Roz, it wasn't like I was out in these streets last week doing it. Okay, I'm talking about I'm talking about back. This is way before I accepted my calling, way before I became a preacher. And so, yes, I ain't been a preacher my whole life. So don't get it twisted. I don't want anybody thinking like this is recent history. I'm talking about young man activities. You know, we were talking about teenage, college years. I'm not talking about anything, you know, post my accepting my call to be Jesus. So I need to put that out there in case anybody in the chat who ain't familiar, who saw, I'm sure Roz was just joking, poking fun, but you know, you always got to clear that. You got to clear that mess up, because that'd be the next thing. Like, oh man, you know, Rev Kev out there sticking and moving. No, them days is behind.
Back in the day. Carolyn says, trust when I tell you she's glad you didn't take her up on the option. Probably. You said her girlfriends are going? You said her girlfriends? Yeah, it's a girl's third wheel. So
it started out as it was going to be a couple's trip, but all of the guys opted out. So when all of the ladies came to each of their guys, all the guys opted out. So
yeah, we don't want to see that. They bringing women on stage. We don't want to see all that. Nah. I vibe with both of them. I mean, they got a whole lot of tracks, both of them that I like, but I don't need to see the concert. I'm good. I'm with you. Kevin say Said I was a man before I was a preacher.
Most of us were.
Yeah, right. Right.
You know, but I always say, I was just telling somebody this the other day, you know, I think one of the problems with the church is like once you do get saved and you follow Christ, people run away from who they were. And that's as much a part of your testimony as who you are now. So it's like when I talk about things that were part of my previous life, I don't necessarily talk about them as like a badge of honor or I'm trying to relive those days. But it is helpful for people who are trying to make a transition themselves and are struggling with being in the world and trying to get into the church. And, you know, some of that is, hey man, look, I've been where you've been, and this is what was necessary, you know, to try to make that transition. Because sometimes people look at people who are in the church as holier than thou, or they ain't never done nothing wrong, or at worst, you know, hypocrites, because they know you before you was in the church and you try to act like you don't. Right. And so I think, you know, the church can benefit by saying, hey, you know, my past is not who I am anymore, but you need to understand what you see in front of you ain't always what it was. And here's how I got there. And I think that helped. I think that's more helpful in trying to get people there than just trying to prove all the time, if you're in the church, that you're perfect and that you've always had it all together. I don't think that does a service for the ministry.
I'm with you on that.
And trying to help people.
Yeah, if I'm younger, when I was younger, somebody saying like, hey, I did this and now I'm here, that would resonate with me more too. So yeah, for sure. Hey, Jenny, it's good to see you. Darnell writes, I took my wife to see Maxwell in Louisville. Let me tell you, money well spent. If you know what I mean, free game. Is that right? Maxwell, yeah. Can't go wrong with Maxwell either. Some people talking about The Breakfast Club, the movie, old school. Yeah, seminal. I mean, you're going back way before streaming, back when you had on TV and maybe one or two channels, cable channels. Yeah, that was a thing. But that's all I got, folks. Thanks for being here. Thanks to Rosemary and Phil. Thanks to Terrace jumping in. We appreciate you. Thanks to all the crew members. We're on episode, so Tuesday will be episode 26. And just to give you a heads up, each season has roughly about 24, 25 episodes. Then we take about a 3 to 4 week break. So just give you a heads up, you know, get in, vibe with us while we're here. Of course, we'll be taking a hiatus and then we'll be back for season 4. So just give you a heads up as we get close to the end of this season. Look, everybody, have a great holiday. Whatever it means to you is what it means to you. Do you, right? Do you. And happy Independence Day to the nation. I wish us nothing but the best. And we'll be back with you next week. So have a great weekend.